Yeah, man. You want to roll with it?
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks for
do it.
coming on, man.
I'm glad to be here, dude. I haven't
Connor,
done one of these
thanks,
in a
man.
long ass time.
Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. This is number 8.
This is 8.
This is number 8.
Yeah.
Nice.
8, I believe. Yeah.
We could. Yeah. Don't. I won't hold you to it because you could put it out of sequence wherever you think it'll end up falling into line.
This is number 70, actually.
Okay.
I'm very experienced.
Yeah.
By the time this goes out, super
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah,
But thanks, dude. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, and I appreciate having me, man.
So the reason why I reached out to you initially was because I saw your message in the group channel about Endevr and some of the things you were doing. So
Yeah.
I want to start by asking you about what Endevr is, all that kind of stuff. But then I do want to get into some of that like seascaping and like this like fucking marine exploration stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you tell everybody what Endevr is? And then I kind of want to talk about like how you got into that. And yeah, we'll just roll with it, dude.
We'll roll with it. Cool, man. Well, again, I appreciate having me, man. This is like a second home to me. I love 239. Shout out to Alex. Shout out to the whole 239 crew. Michael painting out front right now, holding down the fort. So, but yeah, man. So Endevr, super proud of it. And here's the one-liner. Let's keep it simple. The one-liner of Endevr, and then we'll kind of work backwards with the story. It's a web solution that matches early professionals with a personalized online learning path for their career goals. So think of early professionals as recent graduates or that associate entry level employee.
Yep.
And think of, simply put, personalized learning path as just that, taking a collection of curriculum of online learning resources aggregated from over 25 blue chip providers that do include Coursera, Pluralsight, LinkedIn Learning, a lot of those big, massive open online course programs. Aggregate from all of those different providers, and then based on some information we collect from each respective user's onboarding, we'll then lay out that personalized learning path in sequence with where they should start and where they should continue to reskill, continue to upskill, all with the purpose of achieving their career goals. So very much has an employment element to it, but not quite the conversion of jobs in themselves. It's the continuous learning to help you go achieve those jobs, help you get those jobs, help you get the promotion, change your career. I think there's over 40 million Gen Zs now that are either in schooling, about to graduate, or have already graduated, and a good 85% of those are already highly considering changing their career.
And what's the reason for that? Because they're just like not qualified for the jobs, or?
So yeah, first and foremost, yeah, definitely. And that then reciprocates on the other side, where the employers even have a lack of confidence in the emerging workforce, where they're not gaining the proper qualifications, skill sets needed to fulfill the jobs that are being made available. And to even just build on that too, coming out of this pandemic, you can agree with it as well, I'm sure. It's accelerated the rate of adoption of technology across all industry sectors, even the ones that were
super paper-based.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Super far behind too.
Right, and so all of them now, massive adoption of technology, and so you can almost consider the gap widening, where more and more jobs are being made available with more and more intense requirements, skill set requirements. And there's just not enough students graduating, not enough young professionals graduating out of traditional school to fulfill those roles and to keep up with the rate of learning that needs to fulfill those roles. So it's definitely about shortening that gap. But then to get back to your question, so definitely about lack of general qualification skill set, but also what we've noticed too, and I think I can share some firsthand experience of this, is it's a lack of exposure earlier on in their time as a student. It's the lack of exposure to project-based learning, work-based learning, experiential learning as freshmen, even as high school, early as high school, or even as middle ranges, sophomores or juniors. When I was in school, I noticed it amongst myself and my peers. Nobody was really, whether it be putting in the effort or just having that availability of experiential learning be brought to them by the educators in their school system, which I firmly believe those educators should be bringing those opportunities to the front of the students.
Sure.
And so there's just a lack of that awareness, the lack of that exposure, which leads to these recent grads taking on their first job, if they can even get a job before graduation. Another problem we're tackling within all this. But if they do get that job after or before graduation, it's often the first time that they're submerging themselves in that industry or in that respective role. And so within 18 months, they're like, well, crap, this isn't what I wanted to do. This isn't what I thought the industry was. I only learned about this in textbooks in my classroom. I never had hands-on experience to realize this isn't actually what I want to do. Yeah. And so there's so many leaving, so many changing their careers. And again, pandemic definitely was a catalyst to that, because whether it was that young professional graduated during the pandemic and never went to a work office, and now they are. So now they're realizing what it's actually like to work within the company, not just from the comfort of their bedroom for their first job. And so it's just exposure, and like it's like they're running into a wall right after graduation, when that exposure and submergence into that industry or field should have been done years prior, when they were still sub-graduates.
Well, and even too, that seems like a group, but are you noticing that there's also like the students that want to do well and are willing to just dive in and like, all right, I'll do whatever I need to. They're still starting from that same point. So they might not leave after 18 months because they scrambled and they just like fucking put things together as best as they could. Yep. But so you're trying to take it where you've got, it sounds like it's help for both the people that really want to do it, and then also the people that are, just like looking for a regular career, and just give them that starting point of what the real world is like
exactly
earlier, so they can make that decision sooner,
exactly.
or not be like drowning as soon as they get to the workforce.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that all this exposure should and will allow the student to, young professional, early professional, whatever you want to call it, to realize what it is they want to do, but more importantly, what they don't want to do. I think those are equally as important. Someone figuring out, this is not what I want to do. This is not what I want to pursue. Now, that's not to say that they may never revisit that field of study or that career again. Sure. But I think that early exposure and that hands-on experience in their respective career that they're pursuing, that should all help them realize, okay, this is something I want to spend the next couple of years dedicating my coursework and my degree and my after hours, my extracurricular activities into learning more about this career. Or you know what, this is not something I thought it was. Even when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. But then they realized, actually, I want to go in this field of study. I want to work in more of the science side of it, and not just the medical or patient care side of things.
Sure.
So yeah, absolutely, it's all about figuring out what you don't want to do too.
So with this, what do you feel like is the thing that colleges aren't doing that they could be doing, or is it not so much that they should even be the ones that are doing this, and you feel like some of these alternative learning paths are like better suited for this? I mean, where is the deficit coming from? Yeah.
So question of the century, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I think there are a few ways to tackle what you just said. I'm let's see, where can I start here? I'll start by saying and acknowledging that I'm noticing more and more schools, especially even on the secondary level, high school level, are adopting more work-based learning programs and blending them into their curriculum. So I'm noticing that traditional education is, slowly but surely. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to understand they're a bureaucratic entity, and so they can't move as fast as a private sector can, which that in itself is a whole catalyst into what we're talking about right now, that they're public sector, bureaucratic, not private. So they're taking action on it. They're doing, so most schools are doing something about it. Lee County, I think, is a good example. We were working with them, a little over a year ago, and a lot of their programs are being revolved around getting the students out into the workforce to internships, co-ops, apprenticeships, and they're even especially, and this is something I commend, even especially catering to the trade careers. So it's not just all preparing their high school students, or if you're in college, freshmen, sophomores, for white collar or for corporate jobs. They're also making sure they're catering to the construction, whatever it be. They're catering to the trade positions as well, which is awesome. But that's what they're doing right. What I think is also hindering the growth, outside of them being the public sector and very bureaucratic, is just the history of education. I mean, one of my favorite sayings, and let me share, I hope I don't butcher this, is today's teachers we're learning, where are we in the 21st century, right? We're learning from 20th century professors or 20th century teachers who were taught a 19th century curriculum, which was built on an 18th century calendar. So it's like everything we're studying now, all the textbooks we're studying now, so much of the curriculum we're studying now is outdated. Yeah. Every industry, especially now with the amount of technology that allows industries to maneuver and to continue growing at rapid speeds, the curriculum being taught in traditional education just can't keep up with that rate of adoption, that rate of acceleration in those respective industries. So what's being taught is just not matching and not pairing with the same level of requirements and need of skill set that is being taught in education. So that's definitely something too.
It's always a lag.
There's a lag. Yeah, there's a lag. And so
that's a good quote. That is a very good quote, because that makes sense. I mean, and you look at some of the ways that teachers and professors and things run things, it feels very much like this would have been ideal in the 60s or something like this, but I don't know. I'm just not retaining any of it.
Exactly.
That's pretty interesting. That's a good quote. That's a good way to look at it.
I didn't coin it. I won't take credit for it because I didn't coin it. But when I saw it, I'm like, it was like an aha moment. I'm like, holy crap, that makes sense, because timing is very relevant into what we're being taught, and obviously timing is just as relevant into the lack of what we're being taught.
Yeah, well, and it's also it's finding where those two meet, the education to the workforce, and sounds like what you're trying to do is bridge that gap more than I just complain about this shit, and it sounds like you're actually trying to do something about it. So that it's cool that you're taking this different approach to bring these two worlds together, because I hear this from a lot of like older professionals that are in their 50s or so, more at the executive level, that are like, man, the kids coming out of college today, just like they don't know anything. And we were just talking about this last night, is like there is a disconnect from the top to the bottom, going through all this, kind of middle management sometimes of what's going on the ground floor. Like the new kids that are coming up, they're not stupid, but they just learn differently, and the old way of doing things doesn't make sense to them. And we don't do the old things that we used to do. If we wanted to do this in the past, dude, I would have had to say, hey, I'm going to show up. I've got $500,000. I'm going to build a big tower. I'm going to do all this. And you could do it in a much, much different way. It doesn't have to be live. You can put it out later. Like you can do the same things, but in a newer, I don't know, more format, modern way.
Yeah. No, you're spot on. You just said two things that really stood out to me. And the first one is that not all people learn the same. We just did a recent, questionnaire survey with our users and target audience. We had I think it was over 75 respondents. And a very obvious and predictable response was that I think it was 67% learn best with hands-on, kind of what we're talking about now, how important that is. But also trailing that was a nice mix of audio, visual, written. So it's like there are other ways that that students and professionals will completely accelerate their own personal development that is just not being taught or being provided on the traditional education level, because it's all X, Y, and Z. When that student needs X, that student learns best with Y, and that student learns best with Z.
I don't mean to plug your thing, but is that part of what the system does? Like, does it take into consideration these different learning styles?
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Sweet.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We're getting ready to roll out some new updates coming in, before the end of the year, maybe January 2022, and we're updating the whole onboarding process to collect more information like that. We're going to ask them very creative questions, like how Netflix will ask you, does this movie look interesting to you? So it's a very creative way to ask it, but that will then tell our algorithms, okay, maybe they said they weren't interested in looking at, what maybe an article was presented to them, and that will then feed into our algorithms to make sure we don't bombard them with articles, because maybe they don't learn best reading. Maybe we should fill more of their learning path with free tutorial videos and maybe some podcasts as well, because that's how they learn best. And so we're definitely going to pick that up on each respective user during their onboarding, so we curate to how they learn best.
Nice.
And to take another step further, there's kind of a separation here of what we're going to provide. There's going to be that main learning path with those much more robust courses, get that certification, that real badge value that will carry a lot of weight into your next job or your promotion. But then there's also going to be the micro learning, little, and we're going to call it like today's micro lessons, where you can log in, and not every day do you have to, go spend a couple hours in that course or certification. You jump in, you log in, and you spend a few minutes listening to a podcast. You spend a few minutes reading an article or reading a blog. And so micro learning being fed, with those different formats of learning are definitely going to be very supplemental on a daily basis to helping this user then achieve their more robust certifications.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's it kind of gets into the zone of not necessarily it doesn't have to be a replacement for a college education, but it can be supplemental. But you don't know where the stuff is going, especially with the kind of the outrageous costs that go into college and the amount of people that have crazy student loan debt, and it's just it's flipping the script of what we've been to. I guess it goes back to your thing of 17, 18, 19th century, all that stuff is a lot of people now, and I know in the past 10 years, 20 years, have been operating on this idea of you have to go to college and you have to do this stuff in order to do it. But now younger people are kind of skipping college, or they're doing it differently and paying way lower, and they're not getting out with like a fucking 65-pound weight vest on them versus what was supposed to be a springboard. So that's kind of cool because it does flip the employer mindset from, hey, you need this degree, to like, what kind of actual skills do you have? And if you can do these things, like, I will pay you a lot of money.
Exactly.
Which is why most people go to college. Like, if you go to college just to learn and like, I want to just learn certain things or certain topics, like, fuck yeah, dude, go to college for sure. But if you're going to college to make more money, like this, I kind of wish something like this was around. Or it seems like it's becoming more acceptable.
It is,
to focus on a route like this.
You're spot on that, and that's why I think timing is in our favor with Endevr, is because the employers on that side of the workforce are way more open and way more acceptance of seeing those certifications, that may be direct Microsoft certification that proves you just earn those skills in DevOps, whatever it be. Not needing to go do a 4-year degree, in computer science, maybe it be, when you could have gotten the core sets of certifications, that badge value that, like you're pointing out now, employers are way more acceptant of than they were maybe a decade ago. So we're definitely starting to see those 4-year bachelor degrees, especially the rather one-size-fits-all bachelor degrees, plateauing, and these real certifications, these real battle-tested, backed by the actual provider, IBM, Microsoft, whatever it be, who are releasing these real robust few $1,000 certifications, tens of thousands of dollars of less than that degree would be. So don't be, distracted by, it's a few $1,000 certification. Well, you just paid a $60,000 degree too, and this certification
just because you put it on a loan doesn't mean it's cheaper.
Exactly. Yeah. So timing definitely is in favor of the employers now being more accepting of them. You're spot on.
So what is Lee County doing that? You said that they're working with some of this stuff and putting kids in these different programs that are more, I guess, true to life after graduation and things like that. Like, what are they doing? Like, what kind of role did you guys play?
Yeah. So actually that's a good question. So, before Endevr, I was working on a different web application. It was called Fielder. I'm sure a lot of people who may be listening to this may remember that name, Fielder. That was actually, you can consider that one of the first iterations of what eventually led to a pivot into Endevr, rebrand and pivot into Endevr. But it was January of 2020. It was like right before the pandemic became serious here in the U.S. We signed a pilot deal with Lee County, and we built out a portal for them with our previous software. And this portal was made available to all of Lee County high schools. So I think there was 15 high schools and then 2 adult learning programs, schools that were on the secondary education level still. And so tens of thousands, like I think it was like 80-something thousand students we didn't have all of them signed up, but had access to our portal, free access to our portal. And so it was an complete effort on Lee County's part to, come up with that budget to, seek out a software provider to build them their own portal, which a lot more districts are starting to do now. But they put in the money, they put in the time, they put in the effort to provide something to their students that they knew would be very, very suitable for what their students needed. And what it did is it allowed all of their employer partners. So a lot of districts will have, employer partners, just like colleges will have as well. And those employers would create free accounts on our web portal as well. They'd be the ones posting all of the different listings. The faculty would kind of be in the middle, managing anything, maybe making sure something was, sent or matched to a student that maybe otherwise that student wouldn't have seen. We still had our algorithm still doing a lot of that automation anyway. And then those students were able to log into that portal. They had their own Lee County exclusive login, and they could view these hundreds of different listings that were available in the South Florida, but mainly Lee County area.
Whoa.
And like we were talking about before, it included mostly internships, part-time jobs, work-based learning, co-ops, minimal full-time jobs. It was all about that hands-on, earlier stage experiential learning. So it was this three-sided marketplace that allowed faculty to manage, run their reports, employers to have access to the pool of students and to get their opportunities in the faces of the students, and then the students obviously to gain the experience, gain the opportunities. So that's the meat of what it did. But I guess the simplest answer to your question is it was Lee County put in that effort and the dollars and the time to make it happen.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. We had a good time with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, question for you.
Yeah.
Did you start working when you were pretty young?
Yes. Short answer is yes. My first real job on W-2 or whatever was 16, I think, because I was like the law or whatever it was. No. I was the neighborhood snowblower, leaf raker. Would help you rescape your garden in the spring, and I was cash from all the neighbors. I'd be riding up the street on my parents' sit down mower, collect $10 after mowing the neighbor's lawn. So yeah, I was very big into like outdoorsy kind of stuff. I mean, because I didn't jump into like any office corporate-y work at a young age. I've never been a cubicle person. I knew that at a young age. I mean, look at me. I got shorts on, sandals with socks, and a long sleeve. This is actually one of my first companies. This is my first company, Vic's Entertainment. We can talk about that in a little bit. And this is me, man. I'm never gonna be the briefcase carrying suit. I like suits. I still like suits. I have tailored suits at my house. Like they're all nice and tailored, and I love them. But for special occasions, not for the daily go to the office, put the suit on. That's not me. And so I knew I would never be that kind of person. I was that free range. You're not going to be able to get me under your thumb. We did a lot of work, a lot of fun stuff at an earlier age that earned me some good money.
So you seem, now that I'm talking to you more, you seem like the kind of person that was working at a young age.
Oh, I made like $80 from a lemonade stand one time.
Hell yeah, dude. But so with this, what kind of impact do you feel like working early had on your ability on your work ethic, and then kind of your ability to see maybe some of these types of opportunities that you're going into now?
Yeah.
Like what impact do you think it had?
That is a good question. Wow. Okay. Yeah. My brain's just firing with all these different responses.
Let's
right
do
now.
It, dude. We got time.
I think to acknowledge the very obvious that we already talked about, let's marry a few points together, is it gave me that free range and self-creation to understand, how do I work best? What do I enjoy doing? What do I have the capabilities of making a big impact on? And then the opposite, what do I fucking hate doing?
Yeah.
What am I not going to be? What am I not the person of? And to, I wouldn't say avoid that, because I'm never, a person to, completely put up a wall. I don't put up a wall. I will always acknowledge both sides. I will always, play the balance of both sides to make sure I'm still making the right decision. But it was that acknowledgement and early exposure to figuring out who I was as a worker, as a person in this workforce, or eventually would be in the workforce if we're talking about a young age. And so it was definitely that self-awareness and self-identification at a young age that then helped me put my own self on, and of course I had massive support, help put me on the right path to pursuing, the career that I knew I would enjoy doing, have passion doing, would surround myself with the right people that I knew I enjoyed surrounding myself with. So it was absolutely self-awareness, self-identity. And then I think it was also, I know it was also a very young earned sense of discipline and what it meant to put in the time and the effort, and also work smart too. I was saying before, I was the one during the summers where my friends maybe were riding the skateboards and the scooters around the park, and I couldn't hang out till 3 p.m. because I had 5 lawns to mow at 14 years old. And it's like, well, I enjoy doing that stuff. And so I learned and I understood the work ethic that it did take and it was going to take to ever reach the potential I thought I had and the success that I wanted to achieve.
Did you feel like because you worked early, when you started to get into more of like the quote real jobs, that it was kind of easier to connect with the older people, the people that were already working? Like, did you feel like you can more plug into the mindset of them
100%,
easily?
100%. One of the things I think I will always be very proud of, and it always ring in the back of my head, is I remember I'd come home after hanging out with a new friend or a friend for a period of time, maybe we had a sleepover. We had a couple sleepovers in a row, and my mom, they'd drop me off. My mom would be like, "Oh, you must hate him by now. He's probably gotten on your nerves." And the parents would be like, "Oh gosh, no. Can we adopt him? Like, he's so much more respectful than my kid."
Were you like a parent whisperer?
I was a parent whisperer.
I was a parent whisperer as well. Yeah,
I was a parent whisperer. Yeah, and so substitute that now to your point with an adult. I think I gained a sense of communication to adults and not just about saying what they wanted to hear. It wasn't about that. It was just understanding how the adult mind worked and how they communicated, and again, what it was going to take if I ever wanted to reach that level of maybe somebody who I was inspired by. And so it taught me to never be comfortable with how I currently was, and to always, live up to somebody who's already doing what I want to do and has already, surpassed that threshold. So absolutely, it gave me that sense of communication, but also, like you pointed out, ability to work very cohesively and very diligently with someone twice or three times, my age. And it was great because, sometimes they'd see a 16-year-old walking in when I first started those real jobs, like you pointed out, 16, 17. They'd look at this kid like, "Oh God, here's this other high schooler again. We're gonna have to deal with. We have to babysit this high schooler." And then by the end of the first day, I'm running 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm optimizing their processes. Yeah. I'm like, wait, I'm questioning everything. Why has this been done this way? We should do it this way because it'd be so 100%, man.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Well, and so how do you take what you're doing now and look? Not every kid's gonna want to do that, and I mean, it might not even be 20% of kids want to do that, and that's fine. I think that might just be kind of human nature sometimes. Right. But like for the kids that do have that kind of capability, do have that that potential, like where do you see that your company like can actually help facilitate that and make it easier for them to make this transition into the workforce, or in your case, wanting to do something for yourself, you still have to interact with the adult world. You still have to get customers. You still have to do all this. Like, how do you think that your system can help facilitate that? Like, definitely. How do you see that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so one of the first things that jumps to my mind is a pivot we'd made in December, quarter 4 of 2020, we'll call it. We stopped selling to schools, stopped going directly through schools, and we were no longer student exclusive. We no longer are student exclusive, meaning sure, we're targeted towards recent grads and we can still cater to undergrads, but at the same time, because we're not student exclusive, for all of those eager high school students, or screw it, even middle school students who may start dabbling in trading cards or selling their sneakers, reselling stuff like that, our platform is available to you. It's like, so removing that student exclusivity was us opening ourselves up to at least provide that opportunity for learning to someone much younger, if they haven't even started high school or college yet. So it's like, why not provide this level of value to someone who is just as maybe eager as a senior in high school or a freshman or sophomore in college? If they have that level of urgency and want to start learning and want to start exposing themselves to what's available on what we love to call the internet. The internet, yeah, this magic,
web.
The web, yeah. You know exactly where I was going, yeah. And so we were like, who are we to prevent them from using our platform like this? So remove that student exclusivity. But then the other thing I want to say is, and you already kind of pointed this out, is we may never be a replacement to college, and nor is that really a big picture of ours, because I don't want to say we're a replacement, really.
Like, we're the college killers.
Right, yeah, no, I don't want to say, yeah, exactly. But we can be a supplement. We could definitely be a supplement, like you've already pointed out. And so for all of those, students who, may be going through high school and are ready to graduate, but confident or unsure if college is not for them, and maybe they want to pursue a technical career, and they know the skills that they need to have, or they know the job that they want to get, and what those skills, the skills that they must get for that job, that respective job, we can definitely be a supplement, to help gain the same level, not just the same level, the more how do I put this, the more focused and accurate learning and curriculum that you need for that respective career, rather than going to college and taking this wide mass of classes and courses that may have nothing to do with what you already know you want to do.
Yeah. Well, and even if it is younger people, pairing them up with the right college, because even you went through the FGCU entrepreneurship program. That wasn't even a thing when by the time I graduated. I don't think that came out for 5 years after I graduated, but I went over. So I used to work at a company called Flight Docs, and this lady that worked there, her name's April Sterkula. She's like, hi, April. She's like she runs shit. She's really good at what she does, like an executive through and through. And we went over and met with the lady that runs the entrepreneurship program. What's her name?
Kawanui, Dr. Kawanui.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we both left there like, oh shit, this lady is sharp.
Yeah.
Like we wanted to somehow be a part of it and somehow help and do something. We were about like a year early. I think that might have been like 2018 or something.
Yeah, it really started picking up. Yeah.
Maybe even earlier. It might have been like 2017 or something. But yeah, that kind of thing, it could even be a supplement for younger students to like, here are the specific trade things that you need to know. And then if you can find a program, like if you end up working with programs like that FGCU entrepreneurship program, it's like, hey, here's how you can learn these specific skills in coding or whatever it might be. And then here, go look at this entrepreneurship program, because now that the benefit of the colleges is that it does put you together with other people that are like-minded or students. You get a lot of like life lessons that way. But if you can actually tailor it to like an environment where they're actually, here's X amount of thousands of dollars, go start a business or make your case, like it's, by the time you show up there, you're getting value. I think what happens, and it happened to me, is you go there not knowing what you want to do. You end up switching halfway through. You just finish it so you get the degree, you have the piece of paper.
Yeah.
But and I did start working when I was 14, but had I, been in like a real job before and been going down a path and then done college, like I would think I would have gotten way more out of it. But I just showed up directionless.
Yeah.
And
me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. I'm gonna save this here for another second. I'll share this story in a bit of my complete bouncing around that ended me up in the entrepreneur program. But just to give an example of what you're talking about right now, FSW, Florida Southwestern College, we've recently established a bit of a partnership with them. It was kind of earlier this year, and they have already expressed interest. They want to host their cybersecurity courses on our platform. And so it's like, here you have a college that they have obviously their whole course catalog where students go and find that, but instructors in FSW have already identified the value in this platform and the exposure and maybe even more frequency that their students will be exposed to our platform versus the college's course catalog. And so they want to host their tech degrees, specifically start with their cybersecurity degrees and certifications and courses on our platform, and drive their students to go find it and apply and sign up through actually Endevr for the college's courses.
Whoa, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
so you're already
going. We're exploring it. Yeah, I mean, we come from the enterprise model. Spent the past few years with Fielder B2B. Primarily, like I was talking about with the districts before, we would license it to the school district. I will say that me and bureaucratic agencies are not the biggest of mixes.
No,
like
no. You seem like you fit right into a bureaucracy.
Right, and so, it was a lot of fun, a lot of opportunity for scalability. One contract, thousands, tens of thousands of users. That's my experience. But we're not ready yet. And knowing, and something we figured out too, as becoming experienced startup founders and entrepreneurs, is we always had a consumer-facing model. It was always a consumer-facing product. It was meant that students were the end user, despite us selling to and through the schools. And so you can say we almost, diluted, if you would, our focus on where the value should be really doubled down on for
building a great experience for users, but trying to focus your sales on a quote business.
Yep, exactly. And so we noticed that it was pulling us in, I want to say different directions, but it didn't allow us to double down our resources on where we knew, and I'm kind of saying this in hindsight because we were in the weeds of it. We weren't really realizing this. But in hindsight, we did realize that it should have been doubled down on the end user. It was a consumer-facing product the whole time. And so we're now tackling that B2C model. We're going straight direct to consumer. We don't go through schools, to schools, anything. It's directly with these, early professionals. But like you're pointing out, there's opportunity to definitely revisit the enterprise model. And I'm very, very excited when it's, when it happens again, because this time around, it's going to be on our terms. When we were selling to the school districts, and this feeds into why we weren't able to double down on the end user, on the students really, is, in these demos, in these conversations, trying to close the sale and the deal with the school district, each and every single one, because, school districts really operate kind of, I don't want to say independently, but kind of independently. They're really able to make a lot of their own decisions on how they incorporate these work-based learning programs.
Okay.
And so we had District A versus District B versus C, all needing and wanting different things. A wanted the bells and the whistles, C wanted the whistles and the bells, and B didn't care what, they wanted all these different laundry list of things that we didn't even want to roll out ever.
Yeah.
And so we were like being pulled in different directions by what could have been a customer. And we're like, this is restricting our ability to really focus on providing the universal value to the student, because we have to, cater to all of these little nitpicky, I'm going to call them the bells and the whistles again, that the faculty and that the district wanted, and that the board sometimes thought they wanted. And I'm on the other end of the phone call saying, look, I know you think you need that, but your students don't need that in order to get the value that they need.
Yeah.
But it was like, nope, we need these bells and the whistles. And so it eventually got to a point where that fed into us pulling out of a contract, actually with a different district here in Florida, that we pulled out of it because we were like, look, we're being treated as like a complete independent service provider, whereas at the end of the day, by the fortune of innovation coming into this contract, we just happen to have all the features that you needed. But now it's like, here's this wish list of all these things that we also need by the time we even sign the deal. And it's like, what the heck? Like, we were going into this with we were a company that had a solution that fit their initial wish list that they initially had going into this agreement, but then they just built upon that wish list, and it just we weren't able to move in the direction that we, as the entrepreneurs and as the founders. And I'm going to take it one step farther, because at the end of the day, our opinions only go so far. What the students were telling us that they needed, we were doing enough user interviews and talking to enough users to know what they needed, but the districts, they don't care. The school districts, thought they needed all these things, when at the end of the day, we're telling them, no, your students need these things. All of this data, all of this recent experience is pointing in this direction, but you're wanting us to go in this direction. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. We're pulling out. So we pulled out of that, and then that was one of the best decisions that we ever made. We gave up a $25,000 contract, but it was one of the best decisions we ever made, because it just gave us this clarity of thought and realized, okay, no, this is where we need to focus our attention, what we need to build, because this is the value that the students have told us they need. And literally within hours, 45 minutes maybe, of me sending out that notification, hey, we're respectfully pulling out of this contract, before anything was signed. It was in the drafting phase. 45 minutes later, aha moment, eureka moment. And I'm like, oh my God, we can repurpose the platform, use everything we just built. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. Now we can actually do this for the students. And I'm like, holy crap. All I had to do was actually pull out of that, you're
like this, and then finally you take a step back, and then it's like, oh, wait.
Yep.
What's here?
Exactly. So best decision ever. And that then led into the ultimate pivot we made from a whole different model that Fielder was doing with the district licensing and the matchmaking of the jobs themselves, then to just finally realizing, A, no more student exclusivity, B, no going through the districts, we're going directly to the students and directly to the young professionals, but also C, the root of the problem was not the exposure or the availability of jobs, it was the improper career learning. It was inappropriate. It was the students not getting access to the correct learning resources that'll help them achieve those career goals. So we had those eureka moments because we had to make that tough decision of moving away from that enterprise model. So I guess I kind of got off on this tangent.
Dude, that was what I was trying to figure out with this, and it seems like I kind of want to ask you about that from just an entrepreneur mindset too. But do you feel like once you went away from that, now getting more direct, where it's like the students are the end users and you're getting that feedback and you're actually incorporating it, you feel like this is a better way to go to actually give the end users what they really need, and then maybe flip the script of build it and then go back to the school districts of like, hey, I know you guys thought you wanted all this stuff, but here's actually the data.
Tens of thousands of users from this state, that state, and this state. with a high success rate, of getting a job, high success rate of promotion, all these different success rates that we'll be able to prove, and then go and bundle it all up for a school district, bundle it all up for a school on our terms.
So maybe with this and the progression of technology, we can make it 19th to 20th to 21st century. We can make it like the 90s to the 2000s to 20s to the 20s to 40s.
Exactly.
If it maybe shrinking that cycle, because it will never be perfect. It will never be instant, and people are people, and you get in your routines. But yeah, it's almost like over the progression of time, it shrinks to a smaller cycle.
Yeah. We don't have the magic formula like you're saying. We don't have the.
But there is no magic formula. And the criticisms that can come on it not being the magic formula, it's like, well, what do you got? What's better? Like what do you have that's better?
Exactly. What we're doing is we're staying on our toes and like you kind of said, shrinking that timeline of the structure, the frameworks, the content in itself. I like how you said that, kind of shrinking the timeline. But what we're also kind of doing is, and this is kind of seen with how we capture those career goals and then provide the online learning path. We are starting, I don't want to say starting with the end in mind and working backwards, because I don't want to say that a student, young professional's first or second job is ever the end. I'm not going to say that.
Sure.
But we're starting with the future and with a point of time in the future and working backwards from there.
But this is the thing is like, and colleges don't do this either. So it's not like it's a lack that you guys aren't meeting with this approach, but you're not there to figure out what these kids are going to be doing when they're 50 years old. Yeah. It's all, the whole point of this stuff is a launch pad into the quote real world to give people success. And then maybe we can get out of this bullshit of like, what is it? Half of Americans are in a bunch of debt or have like maybe $500 in their bank account
and living paycheck,
paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. It's like, dude, we're supposed to be better than this. Yeah. Like we have all the abilities to do that here. We just have to do it better. Yep. Like you don't have to figure out the future. Right. It's just like, hey, here's how you build your ship and then go out into the ocean and it's gonna fucking break anyway. So as long as you know how to build it and sail a little bit and you know how to jump from one to the next, like that's really all that you can do for somebody. Yeah. But if it's like, hey, go build a ship, but you're starting in the desert. Like, well, there's not even any trees around, let alone any water for me to go on.
Yeah. Or go build a ship. Here's the clay that we used to use to build things. And it's like, no, we're using these materials now.
Clay is the only way that ships are made. Don't you know?
Yeah. Or like here's some twine and twigs. We used to do this, 20 years ago. It should work for you now too.
Your twigs were not broken in the proper spot.
Like, no, bitch, we're using these materials now. These stable materials. These proven innovative. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, man. And another thing you just said that caught my attention. Heading into this pivot, into Endevr, we initially were going to kind of approach it with role-based learning, which very quickly came to find that's not the right way to approach it. Skill-based learning is the right way to approach it. Transferable skills. And I'm not going to say soft skills because we're moving away from saying soft skills. We're just calling them human skills now. Hard skills and your human skills. And so
your human skills.
Yeah, right. Your ability to communicate, to build a team, to effective writing skills. Leadership.
All the shit that the 50-year-old people are like, these kids don't know how to do any of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. 100%. And we have to adapt to what is a volatile job market right now. We pointed out how many people are considering changing their career. Well, we have to adapt with a platform that can be as volatile, that a student can gain those skills that are very transferable. So even if they pursue this learning path on our platform, if in a year and a half you want to change it up and do the 180, you want to go that way, you have those transferable skills that will allow you to adapt and take those skills to a different industry or to a different sector. You didn't just strictly learn Java and HTML because this specific role in that specific industry required it to you. Maybe you'd get there and you kind of hit a wall and then you realize, oh crap, well, this different job or sector needs these different skills. Those hard skills will be very valuable, but also learning and heavily learning that ability to be a leader or to build a team is going to then transfer to that new industry you want to move to. So we're kind of adapting to the volatility of the job market. But another thing, reeling it back in a little bit, is what you pointed out, is students shouldn't be young professionals, early professionals. I need to stop saying young because everybody's young. Early professionals is what we're saying. We can't expect them to say, in 20 years, I want to be a junior X, Y, and Z, and then work backwards from there. That's not what I meant at all when I kind of said that. But we were, first, we were kind of going in that direction. We were like, all right, let's figure out what exact, department or role that they want to have and go backwards from there.
That's what you mean by role based.
Yeah, okay, and then we kind of realized, we were like, well, hold up now. After all of these, this next upcoming years of learning and exposure into this workforce, they may change. They may say, you know what? Love what I'm learning, but I want to do this in that industry. Or I love what I'm learning and I love this industry, but I don't want to do that role. I actually am better, I'm better and I'm actually more interested in this role, not that initial role that this learning path set me out to be on. So we don't want to put them on this singular path. It's kind of we're going to let them bounce around the walls a little bit, gain the transferable and the hard skills that will help you, gain the jobs, a multiple set of jobs in and around that industry and field you're pursuing. But we're not putting you on a singular path. We're going to let you bounce around the walls a little bit. So if in a year you realize you want to go with that role and not that role, you got the skills to make that transfer happen, that change happen.
Okay. So part of that sounds like college too, in a way. I think what people were trying to do maybe with college, or I don't know, maybe what it used to be, or it is in some places, is it's trying to make people more well-rounded. You just feel like are you trying to are you trying to aim for a better delivery method of this content than maybe a traditional college? Is that kind of...
Yeah, you can make that argument.
Okay.
Yeah, and in that question, I will resort to my response of supplemental, not replacement. But one thing that we're actually you just brought up another good point. We're rolling out here with next version release 2.3 in January. And it may be a month or so after that, the initial release of it, but it'll come. Communities where users can join respective communities that will expose them to like-minded peers. They can ask questions, answer questions, learn from one another, figure out, what are you studying? What courses that are you taking? I want to add them into my learning path. Because what we've heard from our users is peer-to-peer learning is still so valuable. They still need that peer-to-peer engagement and that sense of a cohort. They want the classroom without the classroom. And so we're providing that digitally to them. Definitely we're going to, absolutely expose them to in-person opportunities and events and groups that they can join. But within Endevr in itself, we're going to have communities where they can join digitally, and once again, it'll be, first we'll probably do audio, and then we're going to roll it out also into the ability to write messages and comment and stuff like that. But yeah, that ability to engage with your peers and have the classroom without the classroom.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And part of the 180 thing that actually is beneficial too, of sometimes people think that they've got to stick with something too, and one of the things I'm realizing, especially as I go to do this new business of like podcast production, but having been in, worked at Enterprise, worked at Flight Docs, doing all these different kind of jobs and learning all these different kind of skills as I've learned them, is that whatever your skills are, if you actually put the effort in leading up, you find yourself in a spot where you can deliver things that not many people can, right? So it does give you the ability to plug into a certain group and potentially make good money from that, or live kind of the life that you want. Like the fact that I came from, being in a business, like a SaaS business for a while, and getting to go out and talk to customers, most of whom were 50, 60, 70 years old, you get a sense of what it's like to sell to them, what kind of things are important. And then when I do something like this, I can come into it where I can talk to those people and also understand what they're trying to do. I can eliminate kind of their hardships that come with it. And then you can deliver a service that actually works for them. So this whole idea of like, well, you got to stick with one thing, and then if you change, it's like a waste. It's not inherently a waste unless you're just like a rolling stone, like just like a ship without a rudder. Totally. Yeah. If you make that pivot, it's not inherently a bad thing. No, and a lot of these things come together in ways that you don't expect. Even if it's 10 years, 20 years later, like these things converge.
100%, man. Yeah. Shoot. And I just had something that I was going to, Oh crap! But I was gonna it'll probably jump out to me. No, but anyway, to just go off of what you're saying. Can I share another story?
Dude, fuck yeah, go for it.
All right, so this goes into what you were just saying about how it's totally okay to make those changes and adjustments. Don't live every day, with shiny object syndrome, picking one thing up and then, not putting any effort, picking up another thing the next day. I wouldn't suggest that.
That's the flip side. I suffer from that too,
Hey, I'm definitely a shiny object guy myself. I think that's the, dare I say, visionary person in me that will come out sometimes.
How dare you?
Always, identifying maybe new opportunities, bigger opportunities, and I've come to learn as an entrepreneur, I have this 2-year threshold where if after 2 years I find myself in way too much of a routine or too much of like doing the same thing for the past couple years, I'm like, all right, where's the next shiny fucking thing around me? Like I need to work on something new. Let me create another brand. Let me and there's it could be both an amazing trait, but it could also be what hurts me, because it's like, and I'm luckily with Endevr, it's like I found something that I'm so deeply passionate about and want. It's not just about building a business, it's about all this impact we're talking about here. Hopefully you can tell the passion I have about it.
I can.
And so it goes above that, and so I will never stop until I feel as though we've delivered the value and beyond the value that I know we have the capability of delivering. But I have to acknowledge that, all right, after a few years of this continuous routine, this sometimes could get dry. I need to do something, even if it be within that same company, making some sort of adjustments that do bring a little bit more life and freshness to that getting dry routine, right?
Well, and it's the innovation piece.
Yeah, it's innovation.
I mean, and the benefit of doing something like what you're doing is that the core piece of what you're really doing is pretty innovative, as far as I can tell. It's like, that is a core piece of it. So the part of innovation, it seems like, is you do the innovative thing to make it not innovative anymore, to make it kind of a standard, and then you keep moving on to the next thing to innovate and go.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have like a pretty nice vehicle to be able to do that.
Definitely.
It's going into the chaos, making order of it, being like, fuck this order, I'm going to go find more chaos and contain it.
100%. Yeah. 100%, man. Yeah. So the story I wanted to share then. So, and this is all leads up to us talking right here, is the amount of times I changed my major when I was in college. So I'm originally from Connecticut. My whole life, I think I got my scuba license at 14, 15, boating and personal watercraft at which, personal watercraft is just, I think, a jet ski, but I think down here in Florida, you only need one. It's not different. In Connecticut, it was different. And that was at like 12. 12, I was like boater's license. I was on the water boating all the time and scuba diving by 14, 15. Loved that stuff. Fishing, I loved all that stuff, man. Well, to a young, eager high school student, that meant marine biology was my career. And so I spent some time, looking into the, career path of marine biology, and applied and got accepted into Florida Gulf Coast University with marine biology. So I came down 1,500 miles away from my hometown. Nobody down here. I was comfortable coming down here because I was very fortunate. My parents had a house in Palm Beach growing up, so I took frequent vacations over there at a young age. Saw FAU at a young age, fell in love with the concept of college in South Florida at a young age. And after just a couple campus visits, FGCU, took the win on that one.
See the lakes or the beach.
Yep. Yeah. And so got accepted with marine biology. And within the first 2 weeks, call it, bombed my first exam. So fucking bombed it. Like a 40% or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my God. And so I'm like, all right, well, clearly marine biology is not the career path for me. Clearly I'm just a bit of a ocean dweller and very passionate about how we can make, cater to it.
Sure.
And biodiversity. But I'm not really the scientist. I'm not sit in a laboratory and write a bunch of publications. I'm not, let's go scuba diving. Let's go out in the field. And so I withdrew from that course and that degree before it turned into like a real failure. So luckily it didn't hinder my, my grades or anything like that. Not that I really give a shit about GPAs. And, and so I was like, crap, well, here I am 1,500 miles away from home. Just spent my whole life thinking I was going to go to marine biology. What the fuck do I do now?
It flips in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. And so I was like, I need to make a decision now before this starts prolonging my schedule with graduating in 4 years, with selecting a degree before it'll affect, like you just kind of pointed out, right? Yeah, you have to make some decision by a certain point, or else it could affect your time at college. And so I was like, well, I got to make a quick decision. What's the next best decision I can make? Which, side note, I always love to say, and it's very simple, and I think it's repeated pretty often nowadays, is when you don't know what to do, just do what the next best thing that you think is right. Just the next best thing. Make the decision, and you can always beg for forgiveness or change that decision afterwards. But make that next best decision you can in a moment of not knowing what to do. And so that's what I did. And I ended up in a communication degree. And
you switched to a communication.
I switched to a communication.
Dude, I was business management, and a year and a half in, I switched to communications too.
Yeah.
The nice. The easiest appearing major.
Yeah.
I like public speaking. Let me just do this major.
Yeah.
What was your mindset of switching to communications?
Knowing and having confidence in my communication abilities, and knowing I wanted to do a lot of public speaking. And so I was like, hey, this could be a very I'll use the word transferable again, degree that could be applied to whatever job I do end up in. So it's like, hey, if I can really solidify this, I will have confidence in me landing in a field of work. And that lasted 3 days.
Whoa. Okay.
That lasted 3 days until my counselor was like, look, Connor, we respect it. We get it. But we think you should be a little bit more business oriented, knowing who you are, knowing enough about you. And so they recommended me to move into business management, the vice versa of what you just said.
Okay.
Yeah. So I moved into business management. That lasted maybe a couple months, up until I was walking. Well, I'm telling you, man, I've changed a few times. And that lasted until I was walking from exam to Sovie, South Village. Remember Sovie?
Yeah.
Freshman housing for anyone who doesn't know Sovie. And I was with my roommate, who to this day is still my roommate, my best friend, Ty. And
shout out to Ty.
Yeah, shout out to Ty, my bro. And he was telling me, because he was in the resort and hospitality program, and he was telling me how promising it was. 97% career placement rate here in Southwest Florida, being it's so touristy, tourism and hospitality. So my eyes like lit up, and I'm like, ooh, I'm like a hospitality guy. My mom has always said, oh, Connor, you're very hospitable. And so I was like, new opportunity. So I couldn't change it because it was final exams for the first freshman year. So I just wrote it out that summer, and then the second my fall semester of my sophomore year came around, which was 2016, jumped into resort and hospitality management. So that was degree change number 4. And now here's where it gets interesting. And this is one of my most humbling topics to talk about. And I haven't done a lot of these recently, but I used to do a lot of talks on campuses and stuff like that, especially in high schools and colleges. And I would always usually start one of the talks or conversations about how I got to where I am with this next story. So I was in resort and hospitality, and part of it is you need multiple internships in at least 2 different category sectors of resort and hospitality. Recreation, front desk, concierge, all that stuff.
Yeah, okay, I know what you're saying.
Yep. And so I was like, okay, well, got to get these internships. And so I very quickly got one over at a local hotel over on Sanibel, and it was the recreational, so I was like a pool boy. I was making some cash, right, and but I was also a sophomore in college, and I was also having some fun, and I was also going out very frequently. And so I would come in sometimes, not in the best state to work. I may have dozed off a couple times while sitting in a chair folding towels as a pool boy. And that then led into getting fired. I was fired from my first internship in my 4th degree change. So you can imagine where the hell am I? What the fuck am I doing? I was. And so I was like, all right, you know what? My fault. I took accountability. I screwed up. Now I got to figure out what to do. I want to stay in the program. Let me stay in the program. Let me get another internship. So I ended up at another hotel on Fort Myers Beach this time, doing front desk. And if you can tell by just talking to me now, you probably would be able to guess I'm not somebody who could sit behind a front desk for like 8 hours.
You
at a time.
seem like you would be good to talk to guests.
Yeah, for sure.
But you just get sick of the actual
just standing there behind a desk. Yeah, and so it was within 30 days. I had my 30-day review. They sat me down at this second internship, second hotel, all in the same semester within a few week period of getting fired and then getting the next job. They sat me down and they said, look, and their voices were like kind of trembling. They couldn't come up with their own words. They were like, it's not working out. Like, you're not productive. You don't really do much. And they're like tripping over the words. The manager she's not even looking at me. The HR person is doing it. The manager who brought me in the office is not even looking at me saying it. And I'm just like looking at them like, this is bullshit. And I'm like, you can pull up the spec requirements that we have every day as employees that we have to give signatures, and then the supervisor checks off when we get them done. You'll see the timestamp, and you'll see my initials next to 18 out of the 20 items. Only reason it wasn't 20 out of 20 is because those other 2 supervisors had to do those other 2. So I got my 18 out of 20 items done within usually an hour of being there, because that's just how diligent of a worker I am and how simple those things I had to do were. And then I'd get the signature, they'd timestamp it, and I'd be like, look, pull out, they didn't pull it out, but I told them, I was like, pull out the documentation. I was like, I get everything done in the shortest of, probably record timing, and proof of a supervisor's signature on there. What do you mean I'm not productive? And they didn't have really a response to that. And so before they kind of like really gave an explanation, I like cut them off. I was like, hey, look, I get it. Obviously, I'm not the one that you thought I was going to be one for the job for whatever reason. So let's just leave it at this. I respect it. I shook their hands. I walked out. And then what I did is I took a magnet that they had. It gave me I'll just say who it was. It was Diamond Head Beach Resort. They gave me a magnet. And I took that magnet. I put it on my fridge. And I looked at that magnet day after day for so many years. But it was then getting fired from that second internship that I realized, I was like, okay, maybe resort and hospitality isn't for me. Maybe this, I don't know what I'm trying to figure out, but clearly this abiding by these already predetermined paths is clearly not for me. I need to figure something else out. And the word entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur, never really clicked to me at that point yet. And it just so happened that going into then the spring semester of my sophomore year, so this is now 2016 going into 2017, I was still in the resort and hospitality program, just kind of maybe getting ready to get a third internship, which would have still been the first out of 2 because I got fired from the first 2. Here's, we were talking about timing before this started. Here's another thing about how just like timing and will always just, be an element in things. Is I coincidentally enrolled in Intro to Entrepreneurship, and that was I'm pretty sure I already enrolled in that before getting fired from that second internship. And the reason I enrolled in Intro to Entrepreneurship for my spring course of my sophomore semester was it was an elective. It was just an elective for the other core classes for resort and hospitality. And it was in that course where I had a professor who we'll chat about her in a little bit. Love her to death, Professor Stout. Shout out Professor Stout. But it was also in that intro to entrepreneurship class that a buddy of mine, who I was only mere friends with at the time, we became more friends because of it, had like an idea for this clothing brand that would be revolved around the up and coming legality of medicinal marijuana. It was a really good idea. It was identifying that any and almost every article of clothing that had anything to do with marijuana was kind of streetwear, maybe inappropriate, not something you would want to wear to, a meeting or to class, big pot leaf on it, inappropriate, obvious, blatant stuff like that. And so he's like, what if we came up with like a classier, more, just a common ability wearing item or clothing that could be worn at classes, and we would do some nonprofit work with medicinal marijuana. Like it would actually be revolved around the industry, not just being a couple kids who loved marijuana. And and so I thought it was a really cool idea. I said, dude, let me partner with you. I'm gonna give you $400. Let's get the first round of clothing and let's make this shit happen. I Venmoed him $400. We designed a couple t-shirts, ordered them off some t-shirt website. I forget where it was. Then started in that intro to entrepreneurship class, started just kind of building out a business plan for this idea. Next thing you know, we're pitching this idea in front of the students. We're bringing in our box of t-shirts. We're selling the t-shirts $10, $15, $20 a piece. We're raking in cash with these t-shirts. We're having fun. And so that led into something else, which I'll get into here in a second, but I'll pause that story there. And right around the same time, another couple of things happened. That same teacher recognized, I guess, true entrepreneurial ability in me. She saw what we were doing, in the whole class. Even though we were medicinal marijuana, we were like well beyond any of the other ideas.
Yeah, you had stuff thought out, and you were coming in with a real
and we were taking action. We were taking action. We were like, okay, professor, these are the assignments. Sure, we're going to do all this business plan assignment. But then we were going home after hours and spending 5 hours a day on top of our 20-hour a week classes. Like we were putting 30 hours as sophomores with just this idea. We were putting in the work for it. And she noticed that, and she pulled me to the side one day. She said, Connor, there's this other entrepreneur. There's this gentleman here in the community. He's been here forever. He grew up here. His name is Sam Lewis. Shout out Sam, and love Sam. He's one of my brothers now. She said he's working on this really cool company called Wear the Fund. They do T-shirts, screen printing.
Oh, dude, I've worked with that guy with an old band that I had.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he made all the shirts. Opposite States.
Okay. All right. Nice. I don't know if I was there for that.
Anyway,
Maybe.
but
Okay.
the guys from the Electric Mud actually.
Electric Mud. Okay. So yeah.
They connected me with
I was
him.
wondering if you were about to say Electric Mud because I
Yeah.
knew Peter a little bit from Sam. That's funny, man. Hell yeah, dude. And she's like, Sam, she's working on this company. I think you'd really like it. You should go and you should talk to him. I think he's an internship. That's what it was. She was looking for an intern, and very humbled to say that and she clearly saw something in me. And God bless this woman, because out of all the thousands of students in the business program she could have chosen and brought this opportunity to, she only brought it to me. She's like, no, Sam, you need to meet this kid. You got to talk to this kid. So she pulled me aside, told me about it. She said, go talk to him. So I did. I went to talk to Sam. I remember printing out like my business plan for Vix to like show him my entrepreneurial abilities, and I felt so proud for it. And then we met, and he got to telling me about the idea, and I fell in love with the give back model, giving back 3 to 5% on every order to a nonprofit partner. They were a small team, scrappy startup going on to the small business phase. And at the end of the meeting, he said, "Do you want to join? It's unpaid." And I paused for a second, and just something in me was like shouting, "Yes, take it,
Fucking
yes,
do it,
hell yeah!" and so I was like, "Let's fucking do it, man. Let's I'll be your intern. I'll work for free. Let's fucking do this thing." And so for the entire summer of 2017, sophomore into junior year, I worked. It was like 14-hour days on average. We were doing 70 hours a week for free. I remember doing the calculations. I did over 650 hours for free that summer, while everybody else was at Keys Bar playing beer pong, joining the tournaments and going to. And I respect all that. I had my fun too. I totally respect it. But I made those sacrifices, man. I put in over almost 700 hours for completely free for this startup that it had some promise, but I believed in it and I dedicated my time to it. And so that then eventually led into a full-time job with that company. They eventually, basically, I guess not basically, Sam noticed my, entrepreneurial abilities once again and kind of, gave me a lot more power and a lot more authority. And so we were heading towards, heading on the way towards, bankruptcy. Things were not looking so well. Financing was not looking, that great. And so bankruptcy was an option at one point. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck that, man. We're gonna turn this around. We're gonna fix this. And so amongst the laundry list of things that Sam obviously did as the founder and CEO that I just didn't see because I was behind doors, and that he, sacrificed his whole life and so much money to make, pull it out of that weeds. But also he gave me that authority to say, look, man, he's like, I trust you out of all people on this team, to really help us turn this around. And so what we did is we basically, not halved, but thirded, whatever whatever that language is for third. Yeah. Into thirds, the staff from like 9 full-time, which included some family members, down to 3 of us full-time. So we went from decent small business kind of size to a lean and mean team of a few people.
Yeah.
Took over the sales portfolio, put a theoretical wall between the customers and him, and said, look, I'm going to handle all of this. You take care of the executive level stuff. I'm taking the whole sales portfolio over. I'm going to be the only one to talk to customers now, so you can spend your time doing right things, and I'm going to be taking care of this stuff. Tweaked a couple things, how we charged more there, fees that he was always willing to be the nice guy and waive because they're friends, because Sam grew up here, and a lot of these relationships he had for the business were from being a local. And so me just being the just the the college kid that he brought on, and he's willing to make those decisions, I said, no, sorry, we're not waiving that for you this time. You're gonna have to pay those fees that everybody else pays. And so it was those little things that we just tactics that we started doing. Long story short with that is, I think I came on, it was like sub 400,000 in revenue, drove it to 750,000 in revenue, so almost doubled the revenue by the time I left within a 2-year time period. Under my portfolio, brought in over 1.25 million in sales, and turned the company around to their first profitable year, over 2.5 million in total sales, and their first profitable year within about 2.5 years of being there. And so it was a wonderful story that all started with Professor Stout in March of 2017 saying, you know what, you need to talk to this guy Sam, you need to talk to this guy Connor. I think you guys can do something special.
Hell yeah.
And that led into some magic. And so that was a lot of raw business experience too. But the story's not over, my friend. The story's not over.
All right.
And this is where now we kind of tie a lot of these loose ends together with the major changes. Similar time, March, something like that, June, or it was before the semester was ending. I know that. She pulled me to the side again and said, hey, Connor, we're working on this new major. I think it'd be perfect for you, seeing your track record with changing so many majors and not really knowing if there's a predetermined path for you. She's like, you're an entrepreneur, kid. You have what it takes to start a company. And so she told me about this new entrepreneur major that they were considering rolling out. We had the minor, but we didn't have the major yet. And she said, keep an eye out on it. I think you'd be really perfect for it. Well, I took that as go enroll in it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I went to my guidance counselor, sat down and said, hey, Professor Stout, my intro to entrepreneurship, professor told me there's this new major that'd be perfect for it. Can you enroll me in it? And the counselor was like looking at me like, we have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Like, we don't have that. We have a minor. You sure you're not talking about the minor? And I said, no, I'm positive we have a major. And she walked out of the room. The counselor walked out of the room, talks to the other guidance counselors in Luckert Hall. And she comes back and she's like, shaking her head, we have no idea what you're talking about, kid. And so I left that office with no decision being made, no advancement in my degree change. So I was still left with the resort and hospitality. And I went back to class a few days later, and as I'm walking in, Professor Stout's looking at me with a big old smirk on her face, shaking her head in a comical kind of way. And so she called me over, and then she's like, you got me a slap on the wrist. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you were not supposed to go tell the counselor about the major, about the entrepreneur degree. So then they sent out an email, like it went to all the students and all the faculty, and basically said, students, please don't go to your counselors or raise any attention in unapproved things, and professors, please refrain from telling the students anything unapproved. And it was completely directed towards us, and we were cracking up about it, Professor Stout and I. And so what ended up happening though, throughout the summer of 2017, which once again, that's when I was working on VIX Entertainment, so I was already building up that company, and I have a little bit more to share about that here in a sec. Where the fund helping turn around that company, build up that company. Well, during that same summer, I would get emails every kind of monthly updates. Professor Stout on the side. Hey, Connor, we're one step closer. We just had a board meeting. It's going to be approved, it looks like. Make sure you're on the lookout. August came around. Hey, Connor, it's happening. It's approved. We're going to make sure you're the first one enrolled in it. And so end of August, whatever it was, school started of 2017 came around into my junior year now. I was able to enroll in it as my 5th degree change. Didn't affect my time, so I still graduated in 4 years, but I was the first student to be enrolled in the program, in the entrepreneur program, and which eventually trickled into 25 students, into 40 students, into 500 students, into now is one of the largest undergrad entrepreneur degrees in the whole country.
Were you at that place up off
Oh yeah, ETI. I was with the program before the ETI even was a thing for the program. Yeah.
That place was sick.
Oh, it's so dope, dude. So dope. So I was in the first one enrolled in the program, but very proud to say I'd already started working on my VIX company, which was the clothing. I'm leaving that part out. The medicinal marijuana name originally was called 710, eventually turned into VIX, and then eventually into VIX Entertainment. And I'll very quickly run through that here in a second. But I was working on startups. I was actually in the startup grind as a junior and the first one enrolled in the program.
And then you found this program that would actually. It was this like stars kind of aligned.
Yeah.
Somebody was okay, all right, this is making sense. So somebody was guiding you to go down a path to learn certain things that were going to accelerate your thing, and that's what you're trying to do for people.
Yeah. You
right.
So you can almost say that the blessed experience that I went through, we're trying to replicate that in a personalized, respective way. You can almost say
Very
that. Yeah,
cool.
It's a great way to look at it, man. Yeah. And so the super quick, and I'll shut up about this because I've been going on forever
How
on
dare you.
this, is VIX, is that clothing company. What eventually became something bigger than just clothing. We sponsored our first show here over at Rhythm House, if you remember Rhythm House. You know that?
I do. And did you know that used to be called Ale Mary's?
No, I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure that was called Ale Mary's. It's the
okay.
one off 41.
Yeah.
Yeah, had many a nights at Ale Mary's.
Nice, man. It's a good spot. And we sponsored a concert there, Afro Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we sponsored it, and we sold like $300, $400, something like that dollars worth of merchandise. But it was in that event, me and my co-founder at the time, BK, Brendan is his full name, looked at each other and we're like, we dig this shit, man. This entertainment stuff is fun, man. Hell yeah. We should tackle this kind of stuff. Let's sponsor some more shows. So we sponsored some more shows, sponsored a couple frat events. And that just kind of led in one thing into another when we realized we're like, BK's like, I got some cash. Want to go in thirds with this entertainment promoter that they're putting on this EDM show up at Janus Live in St. Petersburg, which is a fucking big venue.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm in. I don't have much cash to throw in, but I'll give you my complete undivided attention, and I'll help set up the artists, and I'll do anything that we need to do, documentation, operational wise. And so he put some cash down with these other two promoters up in the St. Pete Tampa area. We put on a show. Only 800, so a decent amount, 800 something like that. People came out for our first show. It was an EDM concert. People like Nitty Gritty was there. oh man, there's a few other people that may jump to me later on this in our talk. But we lost money. We lost money on the first show, which entertainer promoters can usually expect to lose money on their first handful of shows, up to 10 usually. So we lost money, but we were like, we dig this shit, man. Let's keep tackling this. And so we just pivoted the whole company into an event and talent management company. Started putting on concerts in the Sarasota area, Tampa area, minimally down here. We then signed a deal with MTV, you know, the Siesta Key TV show.
Yeah.
We signed a deal with MTV. So some of the cast members, they were wearing our brands on the first season of it. We were in some of the shows on the first season. And we ended up managing Brandon, one of the cast members. He's a rapper on the Siesta Key reality TV show. We ended up managing Brandon and Carson as well. Carson was an old cast member. He was a model in Miami though. So we were like a talent group. Eventually, strictly we kept working with Carson, but not within the company. We realized we were like, all right, we can't do models and music, you know, artists. So we were just hip hop rap artists, and kept managing Brandon. You know, worked a lot with MTV. We'd always be up there working with him when MTV was coming around with the cameras, you know, recording all the shows and stuff. And one of our bigger shows was our first mini festival. We put on a little festival up in Sarasota. Not really a festival. We called it Spring Break Banger. A little over 1,000 people showed up. We had people emailing us from University of Tennessee saying it was a group of girls. This is one of my favorite parts of the story. I remember getting the email. Me and BK were like, we're fucking doing something cool, man. Because we got this email saying, hey, we're so excited. We're from University of Tennessee. Me and my 7 girls are coming down for spring break. And we found out about your show. We love the Siesta Key TV show. We can't wait to, you know, meet everyone and be at your concert. And we were like, holy shit. Like, we just created a little mini festival that we have out-of-state people coming to Florida and getting their tickets to come to our little mini festival to spend their spring break with us. And we had a kick-ass fucking show, man. We had it was 9 artists lined up from 3 p.m. something like that up until at night. It was at this, I forgot, the name may jump out to me. I'm forgetting the venue's name. Mostly indoors, but where it was in downtown Sarasota was in that old mall. You know what I'm talking about? So there's an old abandoned mall that's still up. The structure's still up, but nobody's in the mall. And so there was a whole courtyard unused. And so the owner of the venue didn't give a shit if people pour onto that. So we had people fill up, pack the whole venue, and people pouring out into the courtyard. And we're rocking out, hip hop artists. They're doing some, blending in some jazz into the hip hop. We had a little bit of a different, kind of genre, all within the hip hop though. So I shouldn't say different genre, but different styles of hip hop. 1,000 people, a lot of fun. And the venue owner said it was the one of the biggest nights of their bar tab that they've ever had. It was like over $15,000-$17,000 on their bar tab. Whoa. When they usually do like $5,000 a night. We tripled their bar tab, and they gave us they're like, yeah, here you wanted 10% of the bar, here's 20% of the bar because you just fucking rocked it for us. And we made some decent money, man. I remember going home that night after the show, 3 a.m, 4 a.m. And we just dump out our bag of cash that we were collecting at the door. And me and BK are dude, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah, and you can't sleep.
All wired, dude. Yeah, man. Oh, there are a lot of times where we did a show up in Tampa, and I'd have to drive back for a class the next morning, and we wouldn't sleep. I'd go 24 hours without sleeping.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. You gotta. That's part of that journey. That's the nightlife business.
Yes.
Everything that revolves around it is you've got. That's just how it goes, dude.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
What time is it now?
It is 3:16.
So what time do you have to be out of here?
Dude, I'm good, man. I have nothing after this,
okay.
Man.
I want to talk to you about this marine stuff that you've got going on. Okay. I don't even know what question to even ask. So what are you can you
can
talk
I pause
about
you
this?
Real quick?
Can you talk about this
100%.
project?
Oh, 100%.
Go for
and can
it.
I pause you because you just said something that I wanted to bring up too. And this is just a quick one-liner, and then I'll move on. I've been watching a lot of Neil deGrasse Tyson lately.
Yeah.
And they've been asking for this a while, what's the one question that keeps you up at night? And his response is always, it's not quite a question I already have. It's what question do I not know to ask yet? What question do I not know enough of information about to be asking this question yet? And so I'm that way of thinking has just completely spurred a whole new interest into scientific communications and scientific thinking and doing more research into entrepreneurs and pioneers on the frontier of science discovering things that by mistake that were not meant to be discovered in that field that completely were applied to this whole different field. So
I think it starts off with that kind of it's almost like a dumb way of wording that question, but I'm probably going to go back and listen to these. I keep asking questions in that way of I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
just kind of opening the floor for whatever conversation comes of it. And then you can start to like build those questions and like go into the like snowball. Here, pull that mic forward, pull your chair forward a little bit. Perfect. But yeah, dude. All right, so go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're
there.
good, man. Yeah. No, that was really all I wanted to say about that. Is like it's that way of thinking, man, that has completely changed. Not my way of thinking, but just the way I live my life, man. Always on my toes and realizing that I'm far from ever knowing enough. I have this written. One of my I coined this one. Let me see. let me see. Where did I put it? Let me make sure. Here we go. Where did I put it?
Is this a quote you came up?
It's not really a quote as much as it is just like an alteration of a already current quote. Crap, where is it? Oh, here. Okay, I think I can't find it, but I'll just remember it. It's oh yeah, here we go. It's on a different document. I have it right in front of me right here. My laundry list of hypotheses and raw truths that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
The actual 2 most important days of your life. What do people say? The most 2 important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why, right? A lot of people have said that.
Yeah.
The actual 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you know enough to know you'll never know enough. The day you realize you've learned enough to actually know you're never going to be able to know enough, and there's always going to be more to learn.
Yeah, man. It never ends. The learning never ends.
Never.
You
never
can
will.
figure that out in 5 minutes on YouTube of going down a slight rabbit hole. It's like, oh my God, I'm never gonna learn everything about the things that I'm focused on,
right?
Let alone the other 99.999% of information out there. It's wild. But you gotta but then it comes with just going and doing. It's like just keep moving forward, just keep living, and the different pieces of life will unfold to you.
100%.
You know.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, and so all right. So get with this same theme, like, what is Project F?
Project F.
And then how did you come to this? Because I don't know anything about. Basically, know nothing about the ocean or sea exploration
really does.
or what is it, seascaping and things like
Seasteading.
that? Seasteading.
Yeah.
I don't know
Seasteading.
anything about this stuff.
Yeah.
I've just heard of
close.
stuff like this.
Yeah. Okay.
So what is Project F?
Project F. So before I jump into my 5 pillars of Project F, because it's a very early idea, and I'm basically building it on 5 pillars. But what's inspired me to start working on ocean exploration, and I've been spending every Sunday for the past 6 or so months, like I'll crank out 7, 8, 9 hours every Sunday now doing on this. It was pure interest. Was going off of my original story. Marine biology was my initial career path, right? So I do have a passion for ocean exploration, for marine biodiversity, just not on like a core sciencey level. Well, I should as a laboratory scientist, I should say I'm very sciencey thinking. But one of the most well-known but yet unknown facts is that we've explored less than 10% of our ocean. A lot of people know that, right? You know that.
Yeah,
I've
heard that for sure.
Less than 10%. And it's true. We've explored less than 10% of our ocean, right? We don't know what the fuck's down there. And I'm going to go off on a whole different directions with this, so bear with me here. But we really don't know what's down there. And so when I decided to start working on Project F, it kind of, I was in the mindset of, okay, I want to dedicate my life to research in some really moonshot-like idea or sector that not a lot of people are working in, and that this is something that I can just spend my life, writing essays on, doing research on the history of, getting involved within science about it. And so space exploration and ocean exploration were 2 of those, big, weird, odd, kind of cool things that I was always interested in. And I call this my Elon idea, my weird Elon idea. And I said, well, I'm very interested in the cosmos and understanding space exploration. I can share a whole lot of cool stuff, if we had the time about that. But I said, I'm obviously more of an ocean guy. I'm more of a body of water kind of guy. So I said, let me package that up, and then I'll come back to the space exploration in due time. Let me spend these next few years and maybe build something up here in the near future relevant to ocean exploration. So that was the mindset I was in when deciding on ocean exploration kind of versus space exploration. And so that was the initial kind of, part about to it. But that then just kind of started, creating a trickle effect of identifying problems that could be solved with the ocean, or problems within the ocean, obviously overfishing, or here on land, overpopulation, rising sea levels, then will obviously affect us here on land. Will wipe out all of our coastlines. If sea levels continue rising at the current rate they are, I need to fact check myself on the timeline of this. But in a certain amount of time, and I believe it's less than a century, or a little over a century, if the rising sea levels continue at the pace they are, you know how Statue of Liberty, she's holding the torch, and then she's got the Declaration of Independence in her, holding it like that, like a football. The ocean is going to rise to the bottom of that elbow. It's gonna wipe out Staten Island, New York City, our entire East Coast, our entire West Coast. That's how high the rising sea levels are approaching, or will be in hundreds of years to come. Won't affect us, may not our children, maybe not in our children's children. But the way I'm thinking about it is, I want to make sure, if I have any say or any part in it, that my children's 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 children are going to be able to experience the same beautiful fucking planet that we like to call Earth, and the ground and the grass that we like to walk on, the beaches that we like to entertain ourselves on. We're not going to have that if the people of today don't do something about that. And so it's this very far future generational kind of thinking that has led me into this. So there are real problems: the overpopulation, the overfishing, the rising sea, right? So it is feeding into some real solutions that I'm working on. And so that way of thinking then started feeding into solutions. Well, what solutions can be applied? What solutions are already being applied? And so this Project F now, to get like super specific, Project F now has, and I'm looking at my Trello board of all my different notes. So there's 5 pillars that Project F is kind of being established on, and each of them are going to have a lot of work to be done, and each of them very well will have their own solutions, services, and products. Number 1, to map. And I have to give credit also to Daniel Fernandez, who's helped me out. He's a data scientist and a bit of a specialist with machine learning. He's local here, and he's provided some really cool insight in thinking of how we can turn this into a solution or a product. Map. Pillar number 1, map. An artificial intelligent powered grid that would run both horizontally and vertically. Of coordinates that will create the world's most precise global map of our oceans. So imagine in 150 years when communities, sustainable living is a thing on and below a sub-portion of the ocean surface is a thing. Imagine being able to message out to your family who still lives on land. Yeah, send that package via drone to 1123 Jennings Waterway, Pacific Ocean, instead of the longitude and latitudes. Right now, we just basically rely on longitude and latitudes in a different set of coordinates. There's really no very precise ability to track. We obviously can use GPS to identify different areas and regions
where
within the
it
ocean,
is, but not to identify
but
a specific
very precise
point.
Yeah. Whereas when there is, and I'll talk about seasteading in a second, when seasteading is very prominent, and we've commercialized subaquatic living and sustainable living on top of the ocean surface, that we're going to want to have the most precise way of logistics, of shipping out stuff out there, of being able to coordinate stuff out there. And so the one idea of and it's not just mapping it for that purpose of being able to have something droned to you, to your very specific address in the Pacific Ocean, but also for all of the countries to be able to, whether it be, help with, safety. Obviously we definitely would want to lean on, countries, to help with safety, of course. Or whether that be micronations having been formed that will then be, in partnership with these seasteads. And again, I'll share that in a second. But there are many reasons, a list of reasons that we want the most precise mapping of our oceans, right? Obviously. Okay. So that's pillar number 1, to map.
So, and the oceans aren't really well mapped right now?
I want to commercialize it. So they're well mapped for reasons that the average person like you and me would have no use of.
Okay.
Naval ships, plenty of mapping out there for them to, navigate. Transportation of logistics, shipment, containers, shipment,
like shipping paths,
right, exactly.
And stuff
So don't get me wrong. There is enough GPS and location and already pre-mapped regions and areas of the ocean that do allow us to logistically work and coordinate with other countries that are across the pond and stuff like that. But now it's about commercializing it. It's about making it so suitable and so adaptable and almost normal for somebody like the average Joe people who we want to end up living out on the ocean surface in these sustainable communities that partially are seasteads. It really is all about seasteading. I guess I probably should explain seasteading before I just keep saying it, right? Yeah.
The basic concept, because I've heard of seasteading. Okay. I haven't looked into it in over 5 years, but I do know that part of it is like the political independence.
Right.
Some people are doing it for more of these resource purposes, or whatever the reasoning might be. But what's the main
so
gist?
basically seasteading, if you think of homesteading, when there was the great frontier of homesteading, when there was unclaimed untapped territory, and then there was the boom of homes, of communities being put up.
Seasteading
is claiming untapped, unclaimed territory on our bodies of water, on our oceans, that no government has any authority or claim over. And building livable, sustainable homes and full cities and communities that will be sitting on top of the ocean's surface. Some of them below, up to 10 up to 30 meters below the surface, but getting deeper than that, it gets very difficult based on the minimal sunlighting and pressure. But keeping it very below the subsurface or above the surface, is really going to be the concept main environment of seasteading. But it's about building those sustainable, fully sustainable living communities and eventually cities in those unclaimed territories. Like you already pointed out, political autonomy, whether it be for citizens in other countries, third world countries maybe, who have law or policy or regulations that those citizens are far from happy with, and would be more than happy to join a new seastead or a community of seasteaders that are being built out of Panama or whatever it is, knowing there'll be political autonomy and they'll be able to live the lives that the way they want to live them. I was watching an interview recently, and this can even be another use case for you. I think she was a U.S. woman actually, but don't quote me on that part. I know it was a woman, it was a mom. I just don't remember if she was U.S. based or not. Was talking about not just the political autonomy in the sense of politics, but in the sense of how she wants and was going to raise her children. That may be an extreme, but she's a perfect use case that shows there are parents out there that are clearly unhappy with the way current regulations and policies are that affect the way they're raising their children. And so for someone to be able to go raise their children exactly how they want to raise their children, under their rules, under their regulations, that's appealing to apparently some people, because there's interviews with people who have claimed this. And so absolutely that's a huge part to it. So political autonomy, and then another one to kind of even talk about the biodiversity, because this is something that people always push back against. They're like, well, this is going to fuck up the environment even more. No, there's already research being done with one of the first seasteads, but also just using materials and just doing pilot tests out in the water.
Okay.
That after the first day of putting the materials, and there's one example of a seastead, and I can share what happened with that one seastead that happened a few years ago. I watched a whole documentary on it. And did whole research into it, but they did some tests, and there's imagery, there's video of this proof that where they established these materials, the building materials, whether it was a placebo or the actual home seastead, no biodiversity, minimal fish, minimal species. Within weeks, within days, I think there's like over 10 different species of fish now hovering and surrounding. Within weeks, clams and mussels had started lining the bedding, and these materials are built to withstand the mussels, building their beds upon the bottoms of the holes of these materials. So it's not going to deteriorate the material. The material is built to withstand it.
So it started basically almost like creating
created
coral
biodiversity.
reefs.
It literally created artificial reefs and more than quadrupled the biodiversity that was in that single location. Nothing to multiple species of fish. One of the videos I was watching was absolutely mind-blowing. It was like anywhere the camera went, swarms of fish and pods of fish swimming around, looking happy as all goddamn hell. And so it's like, no, everything is still in the early stages with seasteading, obviously. But there's already proof that goes to show biodiversity is actually a byproduct. A creation of biodiversity is a byproduct of actually seasteading, not the opposite, not deteriorating biodiversity. And so that was something that most people are always worried about. Their always first argument is that.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was very interested to see that. So here's pillar number 2. Oh, I'm sorry, seasteading. Do you think I gave a good enough example or explanation of seasteading? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Pillar number 2, to explore. We want to, and this is another, this is a product solution, and some credit again to Daniel Fernandez for this, helping me identify this. Deploying electric, autonomous, unmanned vehicles, which we kind of already do, but just making it, again, more commercialized and more common. Deploying electric, autonomous, unmanned vehicles to just explore the depths that only the HMS Challenger has been able to get to, the Mariana Trench. And I believe there's even deeper parts of the ocean. And now let me give some element of truth behind that, because so let me fact check myself too, because I wrote down some dates of why of the history of determining that the Mariana Trench is the deepest part.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. Okay, so well, first, okay, one thing I found recently, actually, in some research I was doing, is that the Mariana Trench is it's the deepest natural part we've currently discovered and that we know of.
Sure.
The non-natural deepest part is actually the Kola borehole in Russia. So back when it was the Soviet Union, they dug it's literally a hole like that big. And it goes over 40,000 meters, over 5,000 deeper meters than the Mariana Trench. They gave up on it because it's already getting too fucking hot when they were down there. People didn't go down there. You can't fit in this tube, but it's a borehole in Russia that's over 40,000 meters deep. So that's the deepest actually part that we've accessed.
Like digging to hell.
Yeah, we're digging hell, right? But the Mariana Trench is the deepest part that we've explored. But let's see. So it started in 1885. The first HMS Challenger used lead weights and tethered rope to determine the deepest part of the ocean. That was 1875. Then in 1951, it changed because they started using sonar.
Yeah, sonar and bouncing it off the bottom.
Yep. Which I will very very openly say, that sonar, because this could be a counter to my own belief that I think there's deeper parts of the ocean, but sonar is updated. They use the sonar updated every few milliseconds and seconds, scanning the oceans. And so right now, as we're speaking, a few seconds ago, they just did an update on the deepest part of the ocean via GPS and sonar. And as of right now, Mariana Trench still is the deepest. So I will give them that. I will say, they're using sonar and they do update it very frequently. But then in 1997, it changed again. It got deeper again. And that was when the second version of the HMS Challenger went in. And that's when they discovered and called it the Challenger Deep, which is actually only 1,000 feet deeper than the Serenity Deep, a previous spot found in the Mariana Trench. So the Serenity Deep and the Challenger Deep are both in the Mariana Trench.
Oh, they're sections
of the Mariana Trench.
Oh,
exactly.
Okay.
And the Challenger Deep is only 1,000 feet deeper than the Serenity Deep. So that's what's confirmed. That's what's confirmed based on sonar and based on actually sending people down into the Mariana Trench with the Challenger Deep in 1997. But there's kind of a few reasons and ways of thinking of why I think it might go a little bit deeper than this. And this is, again, going back to why I think, we need to deploy some more electric autonomous vehicles. And I'm very heavy on the electric and obviously very heavy on the autonomous unmanned part of it to go explore. And so I've been having written down, we will use sonar, echo, and cameras. So we will use the current, ways of capturing data and as well as some more. And I got the ideas of using echo and camera off of how self-driving is currently developed, using all these different ways of identifying the landscape. But one theory I have of why it could be deeper is
why do you think that there's deeper parts?
So
it's not, now that you explained that it's actually like sections of the Mariana Trench, that actually, now I'm like, oh, okay, I never even thought of it in that way. So why do you think there's deeper parts?
So where they found it is Mariana Trench is basically these tectonic plates that have shifted that allow them to get that deep. My theory is that what if there's a subterranean body of water that's below these tectonic plates that we've just not yet identified and that sonar has not been able to access to because the sonar may just not be able to read through the tectonic plates. You've heard of the concept of subterranean lakes or subterranean bodies of water?
No.
Bodies of water below bodies of water that are just protected by the Earth's crust.
No, I this might sound stupid, but I always just assumed it was like magma under there.
So, I mean, yeah, when they were digging the Kola borehole and they eventually gave up because it got so deep, they were digging it down into, basically magma, lava, but essentially it was that hot. It was, melted crust essentially. But I have a theory that, there is a somewhere on this earth that is just undiscovered because once again, we are just, how sure can we be when we've only discovered only know less than 10%, explored less than 10% of our ocean?
What the fuck kind of animals do you think?
Bro, that's what I'm saying. The real alien species are, and don't get me started on aliens too, because I have a whole theory on that. We can talk about that too.
Dude, did you ever see that video of it's like, they did a deep sea exploration, and it's like this shark that is...
Yeah, it's like blind and shit, basically. But it just needed to see.
Fucking
huge.
Yeah,
massive.
Dude, it's like massive. Its chest is like the size of this room.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, yeah.
And that shit's at the bottom of the ocean.
Who the fuck knows what's down there, man?
Dude.
Who knows what's down there?
I would not feel safe in that little submarine thing. Like...
Yeah, man, yeah.
That shit would the thing would bite through.
Oh, totally. Yeah, right.
So is that where people get this idea of like the megalodon and stuff like that? I know maybe that's like science fiction.
I think the argument behind that is down deep that we just don't ever explore enough of, and that there is a species down there that just doesn't need the sunlight to ever rise to the surface. So we're never going to see it. That hey, maybe there is some historical creature that's been able to adapt to the depths of the ocean that we'll never see.
Isn't that wild that shit literally exists on our planet today?
It's so dope, dude. Yeah. So obviously, there's got to be a lot of verification behind what I'm saying right now, but
Sure.
I think that the concept, has some element of truth behind it, is that there very well could be a subterranean body of water below the current oceans we've been able to explore. That
Even explaining just those pieces of the Marianas Trench, like now I'm like, okay, yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
All right.
And
All right,
the
I'm
one thing I
following
always keep in mind too is, remember when nobody remembers this because it was really before humans, Pangea, before
I do
the
remember
continents,
Pangea.
yeah. I was around when Pangea was the thing, yeah. No. Well, that was that was all tectonic plate shifting. And so if that's, and it was mainly hovering over the Pacific Ocean where Pangea essentially was. And that's where Mariana Trench is, Pacific Ocean. And so if tectonic plate shifting have created the Mariana Trench essentially, what God knows, who knows what in the next 1,000 or 2,000 years, if Earth continues to shift and more tectonic plates do shift, that will open up access to a whole deeper subterranean part of body of water we've just yet to explore because Earth has not allowed us to explore it yet.
Yeah.
So that's one way to look at it. But here's another
interesting.
Yeah. So here's another kind of historical evidence of scientists and in the world already believing that we figured it out, we were enough, but then there was more to have figured out, and it's relevant to space exploration now. It's relevant, and we'll come back to the ocean, I promise. Well, it's relevant to discovery of planets. So it was the 1700s, yeah, 1700s, something like that. We had Newton's law of gravity. Everybody has a basic understanding of Newton's law of gravity, and so scientists were looking at Uranus. I know it's not pronounced that. It's like pronounced Uranus.
Yeah, these scientists were looking at Uranus. Yeah, in the 1800s. You were around back then?
So we were looking at Uranus, and scientists were realizing that there was a gravity affecting Uranus that was not in line with Newton's law. Or if it was in line with Newton's law, something had to be affecting the rotation of Uranus. And so after some time and a handful of years, scientists eventually discovered Neptune. So Neptune was born out of people realizing that, hold on, does Newton's law have a threshold? Like, is there not threshold, a limit?
By discovering another factor.
By realizing a factor was affecting the gravity of Uranus. And so before that, they didn't know about Neptune. We had all the planets figured out before, not Neptune though, but then we realized that there was something affecting the rotation in the orbit of Uranus. And then we spent time looking, we spent time researching, and boom, there we have Neptune. So Newton's law of gravity held true. Well, then we find Neptune, right? And then we're realizing, well, Neptune's orbit is not following the exact, current metrics or the way we're identifying things. Maybe there's another planet beyond Neptune, right? And so we spent some more time looking into it. Planet X was born. Planet X eventually became Pluto. Pluto, this is a very well-known fact. Pluto is just a dwarf planet. It's really just a frozen ball of gas. It's smaller than our moon. Pluto's a little itsy-bitsy frozen ball of gas, and there's hundreds of them, size of Pluto, out there circulating around Pluto that we just no longer give a shit about because it's too common now. So long story short with that is, okay, Newton's law rang true from Uranus to then discovering Neptune, then realizing, well, there's something else affecting Neptune. There's Pluto. Well, then we started realizing that something may have been affecting Mercury, the current closest planet to the sun. Then scientists started saying, oh, we figured this one out before, right? There's another planet. It's closer to the sun, and it's in between Mercury and the sun, if Newton's laws are correct. Well, they spent so much time looking into it. They even waited when there was an eclipse, so the blinding sun was blocked, and they can hopefully see a planet with their telescopic view. Nothing. Found nothing. And so they were like, you know what? And that imaginary planet that scientists had thought might have been there, they gave a name to it. It's called Vulcan. So Vulcan was a planet we had for like a few months or maybe a few years, back in like the 1800s, I think it was. So there's Vulcan. Well, when the scientists finally, said, you know what, we need to at least look for it during an eclipse when the sun is being blocked to really verify, okay, is the sun just blinding our telescopic view of Vulcan, or is there just nothing there? Long story short, there was nothing there, and the idea of Vulcan died overnight. There's a limit to Newton's law of gravity. Long story short, is if we can rely on something so precise as Newton's law of gravity for centuries, why are we going to settle that believing that Mariana Trench is the deepest part of the ocean just because we have sonar?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, these things evolve and change, and as you get more new technology that can look into it, things, and plus the Earth changes too.
Yep, you're going back to technology. Exactly. Yep.
Whoa,
so,
I didn't know any of this about the
man.
So that was happening in like the 1800s?
It's like the 1800s, late 1700s into the 1800s, So and obviously, as we know, Uranus, Neptune, our fucking planets. Pluto is there. It's just a little dwarf frozen ball of gas, though. But no Vulcan. Vulcan's not a fucking thing. There was a limit. There's a limit to Newton's law of gravity.
Isn't it crazy that people were figuring this stuff out in the 17 and 1800s?
Yeah, dude, it's fucking insane, right?
I feel like I'm
and doing so much of that math by hand.
Yeah.
Imagine being that guy who's got those papers on papers of numbers of the long division.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, man. So that is a scientific reason to believe. Why should we just settle on the Mariana Trench being the deepest part of the ocean? I'm not going to. So we're going to deploy electric AUVs to go explore that shit. And now here's my third pillar. To power. Oh, wait, no, I skipped one. Yeah. Yep. I'm sorry. I skipped one. Power. I'm sorry. Yeah. Power. So the grid, the artificial intelligent grid that we want to build that will, help us, map precisely. And also for anybody who's like, oh, you can't run that stuff, into the ocean because then you're going to, once again, fuck up the biodiversity. Well, we'll literally create them into artificial reefs. Ultimately, just like we would, the actual seasteads will become artificial. The holes of the seasteads will become artificial reefs. We'll actually using the, whether it be we use cable line, whatever material we do use to be, and maybe we won't need to use cable. Maybe they'll just be deployed single cell packs that are kept in single place, through buoyancy
to keep the whole thing
with weight and buoyancy
location.
To keep it in a single location without having to run any sort of cables. But we'll still treat them, especially if they're running vertical, still treat them like artificial reefs. So to double those, not just as mapping, but they'll include atomic components of energy packs, basically, that are going to recharge the AUV so they never have to resurface. These AUVs that we always have exploring the depths of the ocean, collecting data, exploring new parts of the ocean so we can explore 50%, 70% of the ocean, 100% of the ocean. We'll just return to these atomic packs that we have already dispersed out into the Pacific, Atlantic, etc. ocean to recharge themselves. And for whatever other seasteads that will eventually come in the next centuries to come, we'll have laid, just like Bob Buford laid some of the first cable across Texas and across the metro area. Bob Buford was one of the first guys back in, I think it was like sometime in the 1900s, one of the first guys to lay fiber cable across Texas and stuff. And so there are pioneers to the access of internet and the cable that we have now.
They thought that guy was a fucking nut job at the time. Like,
exactly.
There's nothing that's powered by fiber. What is that going to do? And then now everything is like fiber is the top thing.
Yep. So if we can be part of the group that lays that initially that was those
19th century innovations lead to or 20th century innovations lead to 21st century adoptions to 22nd century. Fucking way that things run.
So it won't even power our stuff, man. It could eventually become a core power source to all seasteads that want to move out into the ocean. That will be out in the ocean. They won't be moving out there. They'll be established out there. So there's power. Now the fourth pillar, to protect, rebuild and restore our ocean's biodiversity, prevent overfishing, and ensure the longevity of seasteading. So just to break that down, like we were already talking about, rebuild and restore biodiversity.
Sure.
Well, what I was just sharing an example, we've already proven that it positively affects biodiversity, not negatively. Overfishing, huge fucking problem, man. I'm not always one to go watch the documentary and then believe everything I'm saying. No, but what is that one documentary that recently got released? Seaspiracy.
Yeah.
I did some research into the actual story behind Seaspiracy, man, and actually, a lot of more research into overfishing, and it has such a trickle effect on really what it does to the ocean's environment, which then affect us on land. The amount of removal of biodiversity. Yeah, it's insane. And it's not even just overfishing. Overfishing then results into ghost fishing, which is basically materials that are just left over, fucking sink into the ocean, nets that are just sinking there, and nets that are sitting there from overfishing and from overuse of fishing material that then catch and kill fish. So ghost fishing is a thing because just materials left over that will then kill fish over the period of the years that it's then left there.
Whoa.
So if we can prevent overfishing, we'll have a huge effect on what goes on here in the world. I mean, here on land, and then ensure the longevity of seasteading. Obviously, if we're going to pursue this, obviously we want the longevity of it, man.
And if you're going to build something out in the ocean, it's like you got to figure out how to make it where it can have that longevity and kind of almost reminds me of, have you ever heard of like a video game called BioShock?
Yeah, dude, holy shit. That's like a throwback.
Yeah. So like part of that was, it was an underwater world that was like modeled after like entirely, I think it was modeled after like Ayn Rand's kind of like.
It was nuclear, right? And it had something to do with a nuclear.
I don't know if they ever said what it was.
Which is why they ended up in these underwater. Maybe I'll keep going. I'm sorry, keep going.
No, I think you're thinking of Fallout.
Yeah, I would say, you're right,
Fallout.
man. Yeah,
but
yeah.
BioShock was like where they were living underwater and things like that. And then, people started using these drugs and things kind of fell apart. But like it just lived there, almost like an Atlantis type thing. But one of the questions that I have with this is, how do you create longevity with these types of things? If you're going to have entire, potentially nations being built on floating surfaces, like, how do you avoid like I picture like the Titanic or something like that? Like, how do you avoid an entire like civilization sinking? Yeah, how do you avoid that?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to acknowledge, and I have a response to that. First thing I want to acknowledge is I want to be careful with saying nation or micronation, because seasteads are not creating their own nations. That then is starting to breach illegal policy with some. If you're a citizen leaving some countries and you go try to create a micronation or nation, that can be seen as a terrorist threat, and it could be treated really badly.
More of what I mean on that is like
independent, just sustainable living community.
But like
cities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You have like a small civilization. On
sure.
That,
yeah.
And it's like people's lives and things like that.
Yep. So what
are some of the mitigation?
Yep.
things?
So and so let's see. Let me see. I want to say the right name. So let me see if I can say area.
Because I imagine that the people that have been working on this stuff have definitely thought about a lot of that.
And so here, I'll start explaining it while I'm looking for the specific word. So location is going to be a huge thing. So like hurricane storms, that's like one of the first thing people always think of is like, well, fuck, dude, you're going to be taken out from a tsunami or a hurricane is going to come through and rip you to fucking pieces. So seasteading are going to be built in a very specific strip of, I think it's like 50 miles, 60, something like that miles. I think it's sub 100 miles of like, if you're looking at a map of Earth like that, and it wraps around through Central America and around the ocean and around the world, that has never had, and if there's ever a record of it, the most subtle and most minimal non-damaging hurricanes. The sea swells have never gotten over a few feet in this. I'm gonna call it a belt. I'm gonna call it a fucking belt.
Okay.
So it's this location of our oceans that are so calm. Winds are so calm, no tsunamis, no hurricanes, and any hurricane that's come through here, it wasn't even a hurricane. It was a little light rainstorm that eventually worked up to a hurricane once it got beyond the belt. And the sea swells are so subtle that, and history's proved all of this. It's not just like saying, oh, what is the current landscape? No, this is the history of this section of our planet.
So part of it is it really is taking into account the way that the Earth works, and you do have limitations on where you can build these things. But just like it's really hard or expensive or impossible to build a entire community on the top of a mountain. Like you still have the same physical or geographical limitations. It's not like you could just have this wherever.
Right.
You got to have it in kind of a certain belt. Okay.
Exactly.
That makes sense as a fundamental idea.
Yeah, and I wish I had the exact name for it. I'm gonna try to. Let's see. Well,
worst case, what we can do is if you can't find it now, I can take it and then I can put it in the show notes.
Perfect.
After.
Let's do that because I want to make sure we give everyone the exact name for it.
So what's the fifth pillar of this?
Fifth pillar. Prepare our world for subaquatic living and seasteading by 2050.
By 2050?
2050. Yeah.
That seems pretty soon.
Hell yeah, man. You got a moonshot sort of thing, man. We sent somebody on the moon on a 9-year timeline. Was it 9 year, 7 year timeline? I think it was 9 actually. When I forget which president was it, I always mix them up. You got on
George Washington. He said
got on national TV. Not George Washington. Got on
7 years ago. We put a man on the moon.
You got on TV without any pre-approval of, I don't even know if NASA was a thing at this point, saying we're going to go to the moon in 9 years. And everybody was like, what the fuck did he just say on national TV? We're going to do it in what and how long? Then we fucking did it.
Yeah.
So you have to be that aggressive. You have to set that timeline, not just set, oh, let's figure it out in some time. No, put a timeline on it, because you'll never fucking figure it out, man. Yeah. So 2050. And I'll be young enough where I can still be super active. Yeah. You know, originally I had it at 2100. Then I'm like, although I want to live until I'm 120 years old, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be around here in 2100. Yeah. So I'm like 2050 is more reasonable and
going for it, dude.
Going for 2050.
Hell
and
yeah.
So both subaquatic living, which is just the concept of taking it below the surface, just a few meters.
Sure.
And then seasteading is, of course, what we've been discussing.
Dude. That's cool.
Yeah. And I want to be light on the commercializing using the word commercializing, because that is going to say that I want to turn it into a business. I want to make money from it. It clearly you can tell it's more about just pure passion and having a legacy of an impact for the future generations.
There's nothing wrong with.
Sure, it's going to become a business, and sure it'll be 100%. You know, and I will use the word commercializing because I think it rings well with people. People understand exactly what that means when somebody says you want to commercialize something that's not commercialized, normalized, commercialized, whatever. You know, but it will be turned into obviously a business. But yeah, man, so those are the 5 pillars: map, explore, power, protect, and prepare.
And I'll have you send me like those pillars, and I'll put them in the show notes too. Yeah. And then if you got like any links and stuff that you want, I'll include that in there. Yeah. But like, are you able to say what you're doing every Sunday? Sure, man. Work? Yeah, so yeah. What do you mean you're working on this? Like,
a whole lot of research, man. I'm just looking into any history I can find on previous seasteads. I'm doing a lot of research into the Seasteading Institute. So there's a nonprofit that's been established almost a decade ago. Actually, I don't know if they're funded, but Peter Thiel, right?
Yeah.
Peter Thiel is big into this stuff. He loves seasteading. He loves his moonshots, and Peter Thiel is one of the first commonly known high entrepreneurs of that status who are feeding into seasteading. And so he's actually given talks at conferences that the Seasteading Institute hosts. And the Seasteading Institute, this is a group, they're a nonprofit they've claimed they're never going to build a seastead. They are the first organization to ever establish around this concept. And so they're going to do everything in their power to be a resource, to be a hub for what
people
they like to call
aquapreneurs,
entrepreneurs, aquapreneurs.
Oh my God.
Into the future incubators and accelerators that will come, the future entrepreneurs that'll come, the future business that'll be made from it, the future nonprofits that'll be stemmed from it. They want to be the central hub, and so they say we're not going to build anything, but we'll be the NASA. We'll be the NASA of what went down. That's a great way to put it, because NASA didn't build really shit. Maybe they build stuff nowadays, but when we were putting people to the moon, I'm not going to say all they did a lot. They coordinated over 20,000 organizations that range from universities, research institutions, nonprofits, for-profits, the government. They were the coordinator of all of this.
I've heard that before.
They weren't the ones that were like in the weeds building the shit, but they were the ones that identified that with the big packs that the astronauts had to put on their back, which was like a big rectangle with rounded edges on it. And initially the manufacturers of the I forget the name, the lunar module, whatever, like the actual thing that landed on the moon that they stepped off of, initially built a circular exit way, and it was NASA who caught that they're not going to be able to fucking get out when they
land. We're going to send these people all the way to the moon.
Imagine if you got to the moon, man, and you're like, we can't get out of the fucking doorway. Like, holy crap, man. So Seasteading Institute wants to be that aerial view leader to help coordinate the mass amount of organizations that will stem from these early stage concepts.
That makes sense. You need somebody to be that middle go-between. Totally. The Seasteading Institute.
Seasteading Institute. Yeah, man. Seasteading Institute. They're doing a lot of cool shit. They're doing a lot of cool stuff. I have a couple meetings coming up with them. I'm talking I'm talking to one of the coordinators here in a few weeks. And then another organization that I know Peter Thiel's gotten involved in. He may have invested in this organization because they're a for-profit as opposed to Seasteading Institute's nonprofit. Ocean Builders. They're one of the first, if not the really core and first companies and will be manufacturers of seasteads. these pods, and they're architecturally designing what they're going to look like, and starting to prepare and starting to actually build out some of the first ones. And they're located down in Panama. And I have a call with their CEO next week.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to the CEO. They have an incubator going on in Panama that I want to maybe get involved in.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Good for you. You're all over the place in in the best way possible, dude.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing on my Sundays: research, getting involved with Seasteading Institute, getting involved with Ocean Builders. There's a whole bunch of different articles on the Seasteading Institute. Actually, if anybody, and I can send you the link to it.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to read up on some of these research publications and stuff that scientists have been doing on seasteading, some of them are about policy and law and how is this even going to be possible with law? How is unclaimed territory going to be claimed? Like, how is this even possible? And it even talks about like how, beyond 3 miles, there's then another contingent zone that's another 12 miles beyond a country's border that you still have to go beyond before if you build something within there, you could be seen as like a fucking terrorist, and you could be they may bring their defense system in and be like, so to quickly share a very quick story on some of the first people who did a seastead. Didn't last long. It was right out. It was a few years ago, a handful of years ago. I think it was 2017, 2018. Two individuals, a woman and a man. I think they're boyfriend, girlfriend, involved with the Seasteading Institute. Involved with Ocean Builders, and they went down to Panama and they helped coordinate the building of the first seastead. And basically, it had this big giant cylinder. I mean, it's this giant cylinder. I think that was like 25 feet high, something like that. I think it was called a spur. It was called a spur. And so it basically had enough weight to keep the seastead in place, really, not react to waves and be pushed with waves, but actually, withhold itself in its place, but buoyant enough that it would also hold the
actual platform,
the actual platform, the seastead in itself on this big spur that would kind of bob in the water, not bob a lot, but it would like sit nice and floated there. And so they built this seastead. It was like a 1-bedroom, had a little kitchen, and it was a pretty decent size. You could fit like a max capacity of like 8, something like that, people, up to 10 people.
It's almost like some sort of boat with like a weight that's holding it down.
Kind of, yeah. Okay. It was like this big hexagon-looking thing too, and they had a nice little rooftop too. And so they were out there for a few days before they were outside of the country of Thailand. Outside of Thailand, I believe it was. Before then they started making national news on Thailand, and then Thailand authority got stepped in, and then they started getting their defense system brought in, and then they started making up all this shit saying, nope, they're within that 12-mile contingent, whatever contingency is, that mid-word zone. We can take action if they refuse to move. We're going to send helicopters and shoot them down. It became this huge fucking thing.
Whoa.
And one of them was an American guy, and the other was actually a Thai woman.
Yeah, Thai
so
woman.
she was part of the show. It was kind of fucked up because she was native to that Thailand. And they were doing like a documentary, recording it on YouTube while this was happening. And long story short is Thailand ended up chasing him after them, and they had to go on the run. And so they went on the run on a sailboat, had to go through the Pacific Ocean, running from authorities of Thailand. I think they're safe now. They have to lay low, super low. And they made up all this stuff. Yeah, so Thailand was making all this stuff about their seastead, and they had documented proof that they were outside of the lines, that they did everything within regulation, that they were not creating a micronation, which is why seasteading has to be careful with saying, look, we're not creating another nation. It's creating an independent community city, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's where you have to be careful with that. But yeah, Thailand cracked down on them and was threatening them to shoot them down, and they ended up capturing and seizing their seastead. They actually tried saying that there was like drugs on it, and there's documentation proof that it was just his fucking prescription. Like it was literally just his prescription of like seasick medicine or something like that. And so they tried turning it into the country of Thailand, turning this whole big thing. And so that was the one and only beta test, we'll call it, of a seastead that has gone up.
I wouldn't be surprised if that is the.
It's going to take a lot more.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the typical reaction for a long time.
I'm sure
Yeah, I mean, it could be kind of they view it as that. It's like, oh shit, people are going to start looking at this as an alternate way of living, getting outside of this zone.
Yep.
Like, let's shut this shit down now. Like, what is it? Something at the bud, like
nipping in the bud.
It's I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the counter reaction, but it doesn't mean not to do it.
It doesn't mean not to do it, exactly.
Those are the kind of people that you go out, you do it, you fucking run into the walls, and it's like, even if you can't make it work, that's still not a reason not to do it. If it's something that you're interested in doing, you roll with the punches, and then, you never know what these kinds of things, can turn into. And even if it doesn't pan out by 2050, if that sits dormant for 100 years after that, but the work that you do and somebody ends up finding that, like what, I didn't even know this stuff about the planets and all that stuff, and that's from the 1800s.
Yeah.
Like, people in 2250 could look at this stuff and be like, yo, they figured out all this shit about like living underwater and stuff, or out on the water. Like, you never know. The universe never tells you how it's going to use the things that you do, but you still got to do it.
100%, man. Yeah, and I love that you just said that, because a handful of people, there's I think a subset of our population who looks at the people like Jeff Bezos and Elon and Richard Branson, just to name the very obvious and most recent three who are exploring space tourism and exploration. Is that why are you spending your time doing that when we have so many problems down here to fix? What's up there that is so interesting to you that you can't help us fix down there? Well, first of all, let me shut that down right there, because those same people are pouring millions of dollars into stuff down here. Jeff Bezos' multi-billion-dollar climate pledge. Everything that Elon is doing that has everything to do with down here, even down to his company, Boring Company, that's actually started as a joke, but it has to do with solving a solution, overpopulation, creating that ability to transport, to relocate much more efficiently outside of very congested metropolitan cities. So they are doing stuff down here too. They're not just doing shit up there, but we don't know what you're saying. We don't know what they're going to discover up there or discover in the lab while they're building material and building out a solution or a plan for that then is going to actually, they're going to have an aha moment and say, holy shit, we can use this to solve this problem down here. Wait a second, they just built that, and maybe it wasn't as effective as we thought it would out in space or within space tourism, but holy crap, is that going to completely innovate how we
search for things underwater,
exactly,
or how we actually, ensure the water supply is clean,
exactly,
in inhospitable places, things like that.
Yep. So I have to share one idea. Now I have two. And if there's any builders, constructors out there who are like, after I say this next part, they're like, yeah, Connor, that's just not going to work. Sorry. Cool. Shut me down on this next part. That's okay. This next part is just a very recent idea I've had, because I saw this in a video recently. But with the Starship, the heat shield that is put on Starlink's Starship is ceramic. It's really one of the only materials that can withstand that level of heat when it's re-entering the atmosphere. Metal cannot withstand that level of heat. So it's ceramic. But you cannot just bake a giant heat shield and put it on this Starship.
It'd be way too heavy.
Exactly, yeah. And so what it is a bunch of ceramic plates that line that make up the heat shield, but they have to be placed so perfectly that they're so close that no plasma, as it's re-entering the atmosphere, will get underneath it and start melting the metals underneath the ceramic, but not close enough where they hit each other, because they'll crack each other. Ceramic will start cracking each other when the heat shield will crack. So my concept is, I wonder if, to adapt to the changing levels of pressure within our oceans, what if we built some sort of machine, some sort of atmospheric prevention shield, just like we do a heat shield re-entering the atmosphere, that contracted as it got deeper. It contracted and contracted and contracted, but still was large enough by the time it reached the bottom of the ocean, where it would still withhold the 15,000 pounds per square inch, which is over 10,000 times our average 15 pounds per square inch up here on the surface.
It's like not even the reverse, but it's something that starts expanded and then condenses.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So exactly. So it's just an idea. It's just an idea that I saw how Elon's applying it to the heat shield, and I was like, oh, maybe we adapt to the pressures, because that's one of the hardest things that prevent us from getting so deep is the pressures. But anyway, so I want to share a few examples of stories of scientists on the frontier who have discovered shit by accident, which now play a role in everybody's daily life, or maybe not daily life, but have made a big impact. And so here's my first one. A gentleman by the name of Percy LeBron Spencer. He's working on magnetrons. They're high-powered vacuum tubes, generate short radio waves that are called microwaves. Well, he was actually so what he was doing his job as usual, researching his magnetrons, when he realized the candy bar in his pocket had melted when he was within his laboratory. And then there have you the microwave. So the microwave was born out of just a scientist, researching into into magnetrons. And another thing I want to say about microwaves is I want to break a myth here. Some people think like microwaves cause cancer or some shit like that if you heat something up in the microwave. Because I don't know if people think it uses God knows what waves, but the way microwaves work and the way it heats things up is these magnetrons, right? Yeah, magnetrons. They move at such a frequency that it creates friction in the water molecules in your food. All food has water molecules, and that's why if you look at something that doesn't have much water molecules, like bread, you don't fucking put bread in the microwave because you come out with like a cardboardy, stale fucking thing. No, it's friction that heats up those water particles. So you're not gonna get cancer from a microwave, people. So that was something that was made on accident.
If you take anything away from this episode, you're not getting cancer.
Yeah, you're not going to get cancer from microwaves. And so here's another one. 3M scientists, they were working on creating an ultra adhesive and accidentally came up with a very light, subtle adhesive. And so have you the Post-it note. That actually started as a bookmark. So they were like, well, we would try to make this super fucking adhesive, and we have this light adhesive that sticks to something, and when you take it off, it actually doesn't fuck up
rip anything.
Yeah. So they turned it, that first then became a big bookmark, was the first iteration of Post-it note, and then it became a Post-it note. And then I have two more ones that are like that may be impactful to people listening to this. Maybe it could have been impactful for your family member. And so I beg your sympathy and patience with scientists on the frontier. But in 1928, penicillin was one of the first world's first antibiotics, and the person who discovered it, Dr. Alexander Fleming, never meant to revolutionize any medicine whatsoever, as he described it. He never meant to revolutionize any medicine. His words, not ours. He came across an antibiotic by chance when he left out cultures of Staphylococcus aureus in his lab for 2 weeks, and returned to find that their growth had been prevented by a mold called Penicillium notatum. Penicillin was created on accident. And then another one, an adjunct professor, University of Buffalo, Wilson Greatbatch. He's building equipment intended to record heart sounds, used the wrong transistor, and discovered that instead of recording sounds, his device gave off an electrical pulse. There have you the pacemaker, which has saved people's fucking lives.
Whoa.
Made by accident, man.
Yeah, dude, that's what I'm saying is, and it comes with all this stuff that we've been talking about is, you just don't know where this stuff will lead. You start fucking mowing lawns, and you're doing you're at school selling shirts, and then that turns into something, and then you're doing a nightclub company or like an entertainment company. Now you're doing things in education. It's like now you're doing things in the ocean. It's like you just keep going, and you don't know where this stuff is gonna lead. No. And I mean, I guess as we, kind of wrap this up, it's like, man, I think that's the fucking takeaway from this one is like, just keep fucking moving and keep doing.
I have something written down, man, that I wanted to make sure as we're wrapping it up.
Go for it.
One of the greatest things, one of the best things that we as humans can do, ask questions. Be curious. Yeah. Don't settle for what may have already been discovered, unless it's an objective truth, like it has been repeated over and over for centuries that this is fact. Sorry, this is fact. That's an objective truth, which there are only a handful of those. I get it. Maybe don't spend a whole lot of your time trying to debunk or whatever that objective truth. But for everything else, be fucking curious, man. Ask the questions. Yeah. Don't be intellectually lazy. Neil deGrasse Tyson said something one time. He put it in a good way when he was talking about intellectual laziness. If somebody were to come to you and be so sure of something and say, hey, man, do you believe this? Saying, no, I don't believe it, that's crap, is equally as lazy as saying, oh, yeah, I believe it. They're both equally as lazy. Ask questions. Probe the questions. Dig into
why do you believe
that?
Yeah.
What proof do you have?
What assumptions have you made?
Who's backed up this proof? How many tests have you ran on this? So be curious. Ask some questions. I don't think that there's such a thing as somebody really being stupid. You're just intellectually lazy. So don't be intellectually lazy, man. Be curious and ask a lot of fucking questions.
Agreed, yeah. Dude. Well, man, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Fun. So, I agree. We fucking should do this again before you go over to the East Coast.
I have a handful of things that we didn't get to talk about, but we will save them for the next one because.
Dude, hell yeah, let's
save them. Let's save them.
But So tell everybody where they can find you, where
Yeah.
they want you to check them out, and then I'll check you out, and then I'll put that in the show notes and everything like that.
Yeah. So I'm not a huge social media guy, you won't find me on Twitter personally, on Instagram, anything like that. But I love people finding me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So it's just my first and last name, Connor Firmender. I'm sure you'll include, my name,
Sure.
my spelling of that in the descriptor of this podcast. So yeah, definitely go connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very open to connections. Shoot me a message if you think anything I said was interesting and you want to have another conversation about it. Because like I just said, be curious and ask questions. Push back against some stuff I just said. Right? Don't just take everything I said and believe everything. Be curious. Look into some stuff I said. Right? So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn through my first and last name. Obviously, message me, or shoot me an email. Is simple. My first and last name @gmail.com. So once again, just grab that spelling from this podcast descriptor, add it @gmail.com to the end of that. Shoot me an email. I'll respond usually within 12 hours. I'm a very fast responder. Check it every day, multiple times a day.
And check and
check out
Endevr.
Endevr.
Check out Endevr.
And check out Endevr. Yeah.
If you're wondering how to spell it, here it is.
ENDEVR. Took out a few vowels out of that. Yeah. I love my short.
We don't do any 3 E's.
We don't do
in our
anything.
stuff.
Yeah. So www.joinendevr.com. Joinendevr.com. ENDEVR. You can find everything about us there. We're also on social media, like companies on social media. So that'd be really cool if you followed us. That'd be dope. But yeah, man, check us out and reach out to me if you want to talk.
Hell yeah. And as always, if you like what this looks like or sounds like, reach out, Cheine Productions, ChineProductions.com or Cheine Productions on Instagram. And,
seriously, y'all, he's got a great setup here. This is the most professional podcast setup I've ever been a part of. So you'd enjoy your time being here and spending your time with his production company. You won't be sorry.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, thanks for doing this, dude. I appreciate it.
It's a good time, man.
Yeah, hell yeah.
See everyone later.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.
That was good, man.